Chapter 1536. As the moon jade astral beast's life force was extinguished, the aura that had swept through the area also dissipated. Lu Yi stood on top of the astral beast's corpse and held the coin in his hand. After he shot out the silver light, the treasure coin returned to its original appearance. It looked unremarkable, and there was no reaction when he poured his spirit energy into it. However, after the battle just now, Lu Yi knew that the power of this thing was a little too strong. However, it would cost a lot to use this coin. It didn't react to a cultivator's spiritual power, but it could absorb the power of spirit jades. This should be the reason why the armored armadillo beast was able to activate the power of the coin. However, the armored armadillo beast lived in the starry sky, so it could only find a limited number of spirit jades. Therefore, it could only activate a bronze light. However, after the coin devoured 3 million spirit jades, it evolved into an even more powerful silver light. The bronze light was unstoppable in the constellation realm. The silver light sealed the moon jade realm, making it look like a silver eagle. Lu Yi couldn't help but wonder if there was a golden light above the bronze and silver light. If he wanted the coin to emit a golden light, how many spirit jades would he need to devour? If there really was a golden light, would it be able to seal even the sun? However, it was only a thought. The silver light from the coin had already cost him 3 million spirit jades. If he wanted to create an even more powerful one, he didn't know how much it would cost. He didn't have that many spirit jades to squander, so he had to save them for later use. At the very least, he would need a lot of spirit jades when the Kingdom of the Nine States fleet sailed. After putting away the coin, Lu Yi rummaged through the moon jade astral beast's stomach and found the storage rings of Eugene and the others. The three of them were simply unlucky. They had mistakenly entered this place and were eaten by the moon jade astral beast. However, they were still constellation realm cultivators, so their storage rings had some value. Lu Yi was about to put away the moon jade astral beast's corpse. In any case, he had spent 3 million spirit jades to kill this astral beast. The corpse itself had some value, so it could be considered a supplement. However, he was surprised to find that he couldn't put the corpse into his storage ring. This was the first time he had encountered something like this. Generally, there were only two possibilities for such a situation. The first was that the item being collected was too large for the storage ring to contain. The second was that it was a living creature or some other special existence. For example, the storage ring itself could not be stored by other storage rings. Although this star beast's corpse was large, it wasn't so large that a storage ring couldn't contain it. Lu Yi couldn't help wondering if there were other storage rings inside this star beast's corpse. It was very likely that it had devoured more than just Eugene and the other two cultivators. With that thought in mind, he began to search carefully again. Soon, Lu Yi found something in the bloody abdominal cavity. What surprised him was that it was not a storage ring. It looked like a small statue. Lu Yi fetched some clear water to wash it, and found that it was indeed a statue. After taking a closer look, he realized that the craftsmanship of the person who carved this statue wasn't very good. The statue looked very blurry, and he could only vaguely see the facial features. He couldn't tell what race it was. Lu Yi tried to put it into his storage ring, but found that he couldn't do it at all. It seemed that he couldn't put away the star beast's corpse just now because of this statue. Li Shang and Du Lang also came over to take a look, but they couldn't see much. However, since this thing couldn't be put into a storage ring, it shouldn't be an ordinary thing. Lu Yi tried to pour his spirit power into it and clearly felt that his spirit power was absorbed by the statue. In the next moment, Lu Ye's expression turned cold, and he suddenly threw the statue away with a look of vigilance. "What's wrong?" Li Shang asked. "It looked at me," Lu Yi said in a deep voice. Li Shang was stunned. "It looked at you? You didn't see it?" Lu Yi frowned. Li Shang shook her head. She only noticed that Lu Yi urged his spirit power and then suddenly threw the statue away. Lu Yi looked at Du Lang on the side. "It just opened its eyes. Did you see it?" Du Lang also shook his head. "No, could it be that Brother Lu's eyes are playing tricks on you?" Lu Yi didn't speak. He didn't think it was his eyes playing tricks on him, because when he poured his spirit power into the statue did open its eyes and look at him. The look in its eyes was a little strange, and it looked like it was smiling but not smiling, which made Lu Yi faintly wonder if this statue was a living thing. Otherwise, why couldn't it be put into his storage ring? Just as he was feeling bewildered, he suddenly saw a strange green halo emerge from where the statue was and quickly spread out in all directions. Lu Yi and the other two hurriedly rose into the air and avoided the halo, not knowing what was going on. But the next moment, Li Shang's face changed. "I'm being rejected." Du Lang was startled and immediately overjoyed. "The blue halo is flowing. It's an opportunity. I know. This is the opportunity." He didn't say it clearly, but the meaning was very clear. This is the opportunity? No matter how Lu Yi looked at it, this change didn't look like an opportunity. Du Lang explained, "That sentence was inadvertently said by Su Dingyang before. I don't know the specific situation, but this must be an opportunity. Brother Lu is really lucky." So many people entered Heavenly Dog Star in search of the legendary opportunity, but they didn't expect that it would be swallowed into the stomach of a Moon Jade Star Beast. If Lu Yi hadn't killed the Moon Jade Star Beast, he really wouldn't have found it. Du Lang looked at Li Shang again. "Fellow Taoist, you don't have to resist. This is an opportunity unique to weapon cultivators." "Fellow Taoist is not a weapon cultivator, so you are being rejected. There is no danger. Fellow Taoist just needs to relax." Hearing this, Li Shang no longer resisted. In the next instant, her figure suddenly disappeared, and no one knew where she went. Outside Heavenly Dog Star, Li Shang's figure suddenly appeared less than 3,000 miles away from Heavenly Dog Star, along with the figures of other cultivators, about 100 people. Li Shang looked around and found that although she couldn't tell what sect those people were from, they didn't look like weapon cultivators. She immediately understood that Du Lang was right. This was an opportunity unique to weapon cultivators, and non-weapon cultivators couldn't stay in it. Those who weren't weapon cultivators had been rejected, and only those weapon cultivators stayed on Heavenly Dog Star. She thought to herself, it seemed that even if Lu Yi found the opportunity first, she couldn't get it. There should be a test, otherwise, it didn't make sense for all weapon cultivators to stay. She was afraid that only by passing the test could she really get the opportunity, and this was the right thing to do. Thinking this, Li Shang quietly stood in place and waited. In the heart cavity, the green halo became more and more intense, as if it was filled with green liquid. Even Lu Yi and Du Lang were in midair, they were enveloped in it. Not only the heart cavity, but the entire interior of Heavenly Dog Star had been enveloped by this green halo. Many cultivators who knew the truth showed joy on their faces, knowing that the opportunity had been found and its power had been activated. Now, what they needed to do was to do all they could to pass the test. This opportunity had appeared in the barren land for 100 years. In this 100 years, similar situations had occurred more than once. Those powerful realms knew the specific situation, but realms like the Red Sky realm didn't know much about it. Shrouded in the green halo, Lu Yi felt that everything around him was quickly moving away. Just now, he could still see Du Lang's figure, but in the blink of an eye, Du Lang was gone. His body suddenly became light, and when he came back to his senses, Lu Yi found that he had appeared in a green hall. Before he could observe the situation in the hall, Lu Yi felt an inexplicable force sweep through his body, and under that inexplicable force, it was as if everything about him was open. He wasn't the only one who had such an encounter. All the cultivators wrapped in the green halo came to such a green hall like him and had the same experience. However, even though the cyan halls that the cultivators were in looked the same, they were clearly not the same space. Every one of them was in a separate hall. The power that swept over his body left as quickly as it came. After the power disappeared, Lu Yi focused his attention and looked forward. Not far in front of him was the strange statue, but as Lu Yi's gaze focused, the statue quickly melted, then twisted and squirmed, turning into a human figure. Lu Yi was dumbfounded, because the human figure that the statue had turned into was exactly the same as him. Not only did it look like him, but even its aura was the same. The other party was even wearing the same mountain pan blade. Ever since he started cultivating, Lu Yi had encountered many strange things, but this was the first time he had encountered something as strange as this. Although Lu Yi didn't know what was going on, he knew that he had to make the first move to gain the upper hand. As such, When he saw the figure that looked exactly like him, he didn't hesitate. He drew his mountain pan blade and slashed out a few sharp saber lights at the other party. His body and saber moved as fast as lightning, and he charged forward. However, what shocked him the most was that at the same time he made his move, the other party also made his move. His aura suddenly became extremely domineering and aggressive. A long saber, identical to the mountain pan saber, was unsheathed from his waist. The saber gleamed like snow. Domineering saber art. Lu Ye's eyes narrowed. This figure that looked exactly like him actually used the domineering saber art. The saber light shattered, and the two mountain sabers collided. Lu Ye's body leaned forward, and he used all his strength to press forward. However, the strength coming from the other side was no less than his own, and it actually blocked his thunderous saber. Their faces were only 3 inches apart, and when their gazes met, they could clearly see their own reflections in each other's eyes. After a moment of deadlock, both sides exerted their strength at almost the same time. Saber cries rang out, and the two figures leaned back. Saber halos visible to the naked eye spread out from the point of contact. The two figures instantly stabilized themselves, and their sabers slashed at each other once more. End of chapter. Chapter 1537. There were no flashy collisions, only the sounds of saber light and saber cries. With each collision, whether it was Lu Yi or the figure transformed from the sculpture, their bodies trembled violently as their spiritual qi surged. After just a moment of fighting, Lu Yi confirmed one thing: this opponent was his other self. Not only did he have the exact same appearance and saber as himself, even his strength and fighting style were no different from his own. Was this the test of the opportunity? It seemed that if he wanted to obtain this opportunity, he must first pass this test. In other words, he had to get rid of his other self. Lu Yi had never experienced such a bizarre thing before, so for a moment he felt a sense of novelty. But then came the question: how could a person rely on their own strength to get rid of their other self? Many thoughts flashed through his mind, but Lu Ye's mind calmed down and his eyes were as firm as ice. No matter how similar the figure in front of him looked, it was only a figure, not his real self. This was most likely an extremely advanced illusion, so advanced that even with his eyesight he could not see any flaws. The collision of force against force, the clashing of blade against blade, continued without end. The danger of a battle between weapon cultivators was vividly reflected at this moment. Every time they clashed, both sides were almost walking on the edge of life and death. This was something that Lu Yi could never experience when fighting other enemies. So far, among the enemies he had encountered, even if they were on par with him in terms of strength, it was impossible for them to have the same fighting style as him, so it was very rare for such a scene to occur. However, in this battle, they were truly evenly matched. Moreover, the auras of both sides were extremely aggressive. Every time the saber slashed down, it was extremely oppressive. Either the enemy would die, or they would die. But in such an intense battle, the two figures were able to perfectly block each other's attacks without suffering the slightest injury. Lu Yi felt like he was looking into a mirror. Although this battle was fierce, it made him feel extremely uncomfortable. Until a certain moment, the figure opposite him suddenly changed his saber stance and a light bloomed. Lu Yi was startled and hurriedly retreated. Like the explosion of the sun, a saber lotus slowly bloomed, each petal dancing in the air condensed from saber light. Soon, half of the hall was covered by this saber lotus. Son of the Lotus! Even though Lu Yi had guessed that the other party might be able to use the 3 Tyrant Saber techniques when he had seen the other party use the Tyrant Saber technique, Lu Yi still found it hard to believe when he saw it with his own eyes. This illusion was a little too brilliant. All of his abilities could be perfectly displayed by the figure in front of him. This was the first time he faced the might of the Lotus Sun directly. This feeling was completely different from when he used it himself. This feeling was from the perspective of the person being attacked, and he could feel the terror of the Lotus Sun more and more. Even though he saw that the situation was bad and retreated, he still couldn't avoid being enveloped by the aftershocks of the Lotus Sun. Being sliced by the saber light from all directions, Lu Yi hurriedly constructed the Holy Protection Spirit rune to resolve the situation. Before he could stabilize his body, bits of saber light attacked him from the front. Stars. He couldn't avoid it. Lu Yi's skin tightened and he felt a chill run down his spine. In his field of vision, he could only see the stars in the sky falling towards him. After losing the initiative in one move, Lu Yi found that the other party's attacks were endless. It seemed like the other party wanted to kill him here. If he was killed by his other self in such a test, it would be too embarrassing. Even the Holy Protection Spirit rune couldn't block such a continuous and violent attack. He knew his own offensive power very well, so Lu Yi didn't defend at all. He just activated his saber aura and slashed out continuously. The sound of the tide sea rang out, layer upon layer, endless. The stars fell and the tide sea broke. Lu Yi felt a slight pain in his arm and took the opportunity to retreat. Before he could stabilize himself, a figure wrapped in boundless killing intent pounced on him from the broken saber light. The extremely violent and oppressive aura made one's heart heavy. Lu Yi finally understood what his enemy had faced. Under the pressure of such a domineering aura, if one's mind wasn't calm enough, it would be easy to fall into a disadvantage. Even if one was strong enough, they might not be able to fully display their strength. He spun his saber and rushed forward to meet the other party. This was the only thing he could do now. The two sabers collided again with a loud bang and both figures shook. Although the other party had won just now, Lu Yi had stabilized his mind and wouldn't be defeated for a while. But gradually he realized that something was not quite right. He glanced at his right arm, where there was a knife wound. Logically speaking, such a flesh wound was nothing to him. With his current powerful physique and vitality, it wouldn't take long for him to recover. But in fact, this small wound hadn't healed at all. Not only had it not healed, but it was even expanding. Blood flowed from it and dyed his clothes red. Lu Yi could clearly sense that there was a strange power lingering around the wound, hindering its recovery and preventing his strong physique and vitality from playing the slightest role. Lu Yi frowned slightly. It was a little difficult to determine whether his guess was correct or not. He had thought that everything here was just an illusion, but it was so brilliant that he couldn't see any flaws. But if it was an illusion, how could he have been injured? And the injury was so strange. Could it be that this wasn't an illusion? With this distraction, the balance of power he had managed to maintain with great difficulty was broken again. Lu Yi only saw a flash of saber light, and even though he tried to dodge, he couldn't avoid it, and a wound appeared on his lower abdomen. Raising his saber to block the other party's attack, Lu Yi silently sensed the condition of the wound on his lower abdomen and found that it was the same as the one on his arm, surrounded by a strange power. Under the influence of this power, not only was the wound unable to heal, it was slowly worsening. The other party's saber was strange. Lu Yi immediately understood one thing. Although the other party's saber looked exactly the same as the Panshan saber, it wasn't the real Panshan saber. There was a strange power on the saber that hindered the recovery of injuries and even made them worse. In the short term, this strange power wouldn't have much of an effect on Lu Yi, but in the long term, it was hard to say. Moreover, Lu Yi was facing another version of himself this time, one who possessed all of his own abilities. Any weakness on his side could be the key to victory. Lu Yi hurriedly urged the power of his talent tree to burn his body. In an instant, the strange power lingering on his two wounds was burned away, and under the effect of his powerful physique and vitality, his wounds quickly began to heal. After solving this problem, Lu Yi finally relaxed, but the situation was still not optimistic. Originally, the two of them were evenly matched, but the slight delay just now had caused Lu Yi's side to fall into a slight disadvantage. He knew in his heart that if he could not quickly recover from this disadvantage, it would only become worse and worse. This was because his fighting style was like this. A slight advantage would quickly expand as the oppressive power of his opponent increased, and in the end, victory would be decided. But when faced with such an enemy, how could he recover from this disadvantage? Lu Yi couldn't think of what to do. Even facing Yu Yao wasn't as difficult as this battle. Lu Yi suddenly realized something. The most difficult enemy to defeat in this world was actually himself. This was very comical. He considered whether or not he should wear the dragon throne. He had the dragon throne, but his opponent couldn't possibly have one as well. Just as he was about to give it a try, he discovered that he couldn't open his storage ring. Startled, he tried to connect to the red talisman in his body, but he discovered that even the red talisman couldn't be activated. Lu Yi instantly understood. In this kind of battle, there was no way to borrow external power. He could only rely on his own strength. As his opponent slashed out with his saber, Lu Yi's eyes suddenly lit up. He hurriedly raised his saber to meet the attack. The timing of this attack was extremely ingenious, and it forcibly reversed his weak disadvantage. So, he had a flaw in his fighting style. The saber strike that his opponent had slashed out just now had a small flaw, or rather, a flaw that wasn't smooth enough. This kind of flaw was often fleeting and difficult to grasp, but Lu Yi had everything that his opponent had, so it wasn't difficult for him to seize this opportunity. Lu Yi really hadn't discovered this before. After all, he had never had such an experience before. He was secretly afraid. If his opponent had seized this opportunity in the past, he would have been in great trouble, but since he had discovered it now, he naturally wouldn't make the same mistake in the future. Lu Yi's heart suddenly moved. This kind of opportunity was very rare. Perhaps he could use this opportunity to find his own shortcomings and correct them. Thinking so, Lu Yi became interested in this kind of battle and pushed his strength to the limit, constantly clashing with the enemy in front of him. This allowed him to find many of his own shortcomings, especially after he had gained the upper hand. His aggressive offensive often gave his opponent some opportunities to take advantage of. In the past, he hadn't been overturned by his opponent because his opponent's strength and eyesight weren't enough. If his strength and eyesight were enough, even the slightest opportunity would be enough to make Lu Yi fall beyond redemption. Lu Yi secretly broke out in a cold sweat. He really hadn't discovered these things before, mainly because his cultivation progress was too fast. Moreover, no one had taught him systematically. His saber skills were basically instincts honed through life and death situations. These things were enough for Lu Yi to dominate most cultivators of the same level. Perhaps some people had seen some flaws, but in the face of Lu Yi's overwhelming strength, they had been powerless to fight back. However, one's own fate was ultimately in their own hands. They couldn't pin their hopes on the weakness of others. Lu Yi found that this was an extremely rare opportunity, an opportunity to make up for his shortcomings. It was really like looking into a mirror, finding his own shortcomings from the reflection in the mirror and then correcting them. End of chapter. Chapter 1538. Lu Yi suddenly understood one thing. He knew the truth behind this so-called opportunity that belonged solely to weapon cultivators. Originally, he thought that only by passing this test could he get the opportunity. But now, it seemed that this test itself was the greatest opportunity. After this time, his saber skills would certainly rise to a higher level. This was a benefit that could not be obtained through ordinary cultivation. As for why it was a weapon cultivator, Lu Yi could not figure it out. But according to Du Lang, this opportunity had appeared in the barren land for 100 years, and it had appeared several times in the past 100 years. If it was really a physical opportunity, it would have been taken away long ago. Why would it wait until now? Only such a strange opportunity would be preserved. This was probably the result of the acquiescence of the powerhouses in the 4 galaxies. They left such an opportunity here, allowing the weapon cultivators in the galaxy to come and hone themselves and improve their fighting power. However, Lu Yi soon discovered something strange. The enemy opposite him seemed to have a strong learning ability. Once he found his flaws and countered them, his flaws would disappear and never appear again. Time passed slowly in the fierce battle. At first, Lu Yi could still maintain the balance between them by constantly looking for flaws. But as the other party's saber skills continued to perfect, it was difficult to find flaws. Lu Yi could no longer find any opportunities that could be exploited. The battle returned to a state of being evenly matched, and neither side could do anything to the other. But Lu Yi knew that if this continued, he would only be defeated. It could even be said that if he did not have the talent tree, he would have been defeated long ago because the wound caused by the other party's saber was too strange. Although he had the talent tree to restrain the mysterious power of the other party's saber, if he did not get rid of the other party, this battle would only be endless. He had to find a way to kill the other him. This was the drawback of insufficient information. Cultivators like Su Dingyang and Luo Shenxi, who knew the details of the opportunity, would never have the idea of killing the other him because they knew that it was too difficult and basically impossible. At this moment, 2 days had passed since the opportunity inside the Heavenly Dog Planet was triggered. During these 2 days, cultivators constantly appeared out of thin air outside the Heavenly Dog Planet. They were all weapon cultivators who had previously stayed inside. The first group of people who appeared were clearly somewhat dejected and vexed because they had been defeated too early and did not obtain too many benefits from such a fortuitous encounter. However, the more cultivators who appeared later, the happier they were because they had obtained enough benefits. Li Shang, who was waiting outside, didn't know what was going on. He didn't see Lu Yi appear, so he couldn't find anyone to inquire about the situation. Fortunately, Dou Lang appeared and greeted him with joy. Li Shang quickly asked, "What's the situation inside?" Dou Lang hurriedly recounted what had happened to him. Li Shang immediately revealed a thoughtful expression and then asked for many details. Dou Lang told him everything he knew. Finally, she asked, "How did you get out?" Dou Lang said, "If he loses, he will naturally come out." Li Shang understood that Lu Yi hadn't appeared yet, so he must still be fighting inside and hadn't been defeated. However, the sooner or later a cultivator's defeat seemed to have nothing to do with cultivation, because there were cultivators in the late constellation realm who came out before, but it wasn't until now that Dou Lang, who was in the early constellation realm, appeared. This was because the enemy everyone encountered inside was themselves. The more people who could perceive their own shortcomings, the more they could persevere. Lu Yi didn't know that as long as he was defeated, he could leave. Right now, he only wanted to kill the opponent in front of him. But everyone had the same foundation, the same strength, and the same fighting style. Everything that Lu Yi could use, the enemy could use. Under the premise that he couldn't rely on any external forces, it was simply an impossible task to achieve such a goal. But he still persisted, because he thought of a possibility. When he entered this hall, there was a mysterious force that swept through his body, and then the statue turned into his appearance and had all the means he had at that time. In that case, if he had a new method now, he might be able to kill the other party. However, he probably only had one chance because once he used that method, the other party would definitely be able to use it too. Early on, when he fought with Xue Hao, Lu Yi discovered a problem, and that was that with his current strength, it was very difficult to pose a threat to cultivators who were too much stronger than him. Take Xue Hao for example. At that time, he had used his divine nature to suppress his cultivation to the early Moon Jade realm, but the Mountain Pandao could only leave a few simple wounds on his body at most, and couldn't cause too much of an impact. In the end, if Li Shang hadn't started a soul battle and destroyed the other party's soul, Lu Yi wouldn't have been able to do anything to Xue Hao in that battle. Recently, Lu Yi had been thinking about how to solve this problem. It was impossible to change the Mountain Pandao, and the support of the Divine Blade Spirit Mark couldn't make the Mountain Pandao sharper. After thinking about it, he really did think of a way, but this idea hadn't been perfected. Until this time, when he fought with his other self, Lu Yi felt that it was time to give it a try. If it was possible, perhaps he could make the final decision. If not, then he would have to make other plans. His mind was calm and his eyes were clear. He raised the Mountain Pandao and blocked the other party's attack. They had fought for several days, and it was an intense battle with his other self. They already knew each other's strengths and weaknesses. It could be said that with a casual raise of a hand, the other party would know what would happen next. Taking advantage of the moment when his opponent withdrew the Mountain Pandao, Lu Yi suddenly grasped the hilt of the Mountain Pandao with both hands. This abnormal action clearly stunned his opponent, because up until now, Lu Yi had always wielded the Mountain Pandao with one hand. The sound of tides faintly rang out, but this time, there was no continuous flash of Mountain Pandao. Holding the Mountain Pandao with both hands, Lu Yi pressed forward and slashed at his opponent. The timing of this strike was extremely ingenious, and his opponent couldn't block it at all. However, when the Mountain Pandao landed, a divine guard spirit mark appeared on his body. The two of them had already clashed countless times like this over the past few days. When spear and shield clashed, they were basically evenly matched, and neither side could do anything to the other. But this time, it was clearly different. Not only did Lu Ye's expression become focused, but his opponent's expression also became serious. The Mountain Pandao slashed at the Divine Guard. Not only was the Mountain Pandao supported by the Mountain Pandao, but if one looked closely, they would see countless small and dense waves flowing rapidly. In an instant, the Mountain Pandao's blade seemed to have turned into a saw, and the small waves on the blade flowed even more ferociously. This was another use of the Mountain Pandao's 10,000 layered waves, and it was also a method that Lu Yi had been thinking about recently. His thinking was very simple. Since the Mountain Pandao's sharpness wasn't enough to threaten opponents with especially strong physical bodies, then he wouldn't use its sharpness to solve the problem, because it was too difficult. From another perspective, if the Mountain Pandao wasn't sharp enough, then it would be fine to cut it with a saw. A saw couldn't cut through any withered tree, but it could easily cut through it. This was the first time he had used it against an enemy, and he hadn't even tried it out yet. He couldn't say for sure how effective it would be. Thus, Lu Yi was also paying close attention to this attack. The effect was very obvious. The Divine Guard, which could have blocked the Mountain Pandao's divine blade, only lasted for an instant before shattering. The Mountain Pandao smoothly cut into the opponent's body, cutting through the shoulder blade and piercing through the internal organs. The scene froze, and the opponent froze in place, staring at Lu Yi with a surprised expression. Lu Yi gasped for breath. After several days of constant fighting, even he couldn't hold on any longer. Fortunately, this attack didn't let him down. "You win." The figure that looked exactly like Lu Yi suddenly spoke. Lu Yi jumped in fright. This was because he hadn't heard his opponent speak since the start of the battle. He had thought that his opponent was a manifestation of some kind of mysterious power, but he hadn't expected him to be able to speak. Being able to speak, didn't that mean his opponent was alive? However, not a single drop of blood flowed out of the wound. The cut made by the Mountain Pandao was smooth and clean, and it didn't look like it was made of flesh and blood. He instinctively wanted to pull his blade back, but he found that he couldn't. The opponent's cut body was squeezing the blade tightly. As his opponent swung his blade, Lu Yi had no choice but to retreat. His expression was unsightly. This was the second time he had lost his blade recently. The first time was in that secret place, when the Heaven Desire demonic spider had lost his Mountain Pandao. Fortunately, he had killed the Heaven Desire demonic spider and recovered it. The figure was stabbed with the Mountain Pandao, but he didn't seem to be affected in the slightest. He just looked at Lu Yi with a faint smile. "I wanted to spend the rest of my life in this damned place, but I didn't expect a young man like you to appear in this day and age. Since you've won, I can only abide by the ancient agreement. But kid, remember, don't ever lose your saber again." As soon as he finished speaking, a scene that shocked Lu Yi appeared. The Mountain Pandao that he had stabbed into his opponent's body quickly melted and was absorbed by the figure. Lu Yi raised his hand and howled, "My blade!" The Mountain Pandao had been with him ever since he started cultivating. He had wanted to find a piece of heavenly phoenix blue crystal to upgrade the Mountain Pandao into a magic treasure, but now that he hadn't found a heavenly phoenix blue crystal, the Mountain Pandao had actually melted. This figure, what the hell was he? Also, what did he mean by the ancient agreement? Although he was furious, Lu Yi didn't act rashly. He could feel that the figure's strength wasn't as simple as it seemed. What he had seen was probably only the tip of the iceberg. He tried to connect with the red talisman, but there was no response. Just as Lu Yi was thinking about what to do, the figure spoke again. "Kid, don't live too long. This old man has been in a deep sleep for too long. I just want to wake up as soon as possible." As he spoke, under Lu Ye's stunned gaze, his entire body began to rapidly melt away. End of chapter. Chapter 1539. Many cultivators were stationed outside of Heavenly Dog. These cultivators were either like Li Shang, who wasn't a weapon cultivator and had been kicked out at the beginning of the test, or like Du Lang, who had lasted for different lengths of time before being defeated and forced out. But even if they were defeated, due to the uniqueness of the test, almost all weapon cultivators who had participated in the test had grown to varying degrees. This kind of growth had nothing to do with one's cultivation base, but rather with one's battle prowess. Everyone had seen many of their shortcomings during the test. This kind of growth was rare and precious because if these shortcomings were discovered during a battle with a strong enemy, it was very likely that they would pay a great price for it. Now that the weapon cultivators had noticed their shortcomings, they would naturally make up for it and correct it. The cultivators from the 4 galaxies hadn't left yet, not only because they were watching the show, but also because there was a hidden competition going on. Everyone wanted to see which star system's cultivators would be able to last the longest in this trial. This kind of secret competition had been held several times in the past 100 years. Every time an opportunity appeared, there would be one. Now that the cultivators from the Quiet Moon and Northern Mystery Galaxies had all been eliminated, only the indefinite Su Dingyang and the Daluo Divine Child remained on Heavenly Dog. The final winner would definitely be one of them. But no matter who it was, even those from the indefinite galaxy, they all felt that Luo Shenxi should be able to last longer. After all, the title of the strongest cultivator in the 4 galaxies wasn't given out by name, but by fighting. And it was indeed so. After a while, a figure suddenly appeared, covered in blood and looking quite miserable. It was none other than the indefinite Su Dingyang. Several cultivators from the indefinite realm quickly went up to him and asked with concern. Su Dingyang shook his head gloomily and looked around, but didn't see Luo Shenxi's figure. His expression became even more gloomy. He knew that he had lost again in the competition of opportunities. Half a day later, Luo Shenxi appeared. Although he was also in a very sorry state, he was undoubtedly in a much better state than Su Dingyang. A group of cultivators from the Daluo galaxy quickly went up and congratulated him. Luo Shenxi exchanged a few pleasantries with them with a smile on his face. His gaze inadvertently swept across the starry sky, and he suddenly frowned and asked, "That fellow cultivator over there, he didn't come out?" Upon hearing his words, everyone looked in the direction of Du Lang and Li Shang's star boat, and didn't see Lu Yi anywhere. Previously, Luo Shenxi had purposely come over to speak a few words with Lu Yi. Everyone had seen it, so they still had some impression of Lu Yi. It was just that Lu Yi was an unfamiliar face in the end, and he wasn't famous either. Even if he didn't show up, no one paid much attention to him. It was only when Luo Shenxi asked that everyone realized this. A Zenith Heaven cultivator said, "It's not strange that he didn't come out. He might have died in there." Although the fortuitous encounters inside Heavenly Dog Planet were not fatal, Heavenly Dog Planet had star beasts. Moreover, there was even a moon jade star beast that had escaped. If they were to accidentally encounter it, the constellation cultivators would not be able to stop it. Not all of the cultivators who had entered the Heavenly Dog Star had returned safely. Some unlucky fellows had fallen into eternal slumber inside the Heavenly Dog Star. Now that they didn't see Lu Yi, everyone naturally felt that he was most likely dead. Luo Shenxi didn't say anything. He only vaguely felt that such a person shouldn't have died on Heavenly Dog Star. He was born with a pair of eyes that could see some things that others couldn't. He could roughly judge whether a cultivator's foundation was strong or weak. If not for this, he wouldn't have taken the initiative to greet Lu Yi when he saw him. This was because he felt a little threatened by Lu Yi at that time. He felt that Lu Yi was a constellation cultivator whose strength was not inferior to his own. There was only one possibility for such a person to die on Heavenly Dog Star. He had accidentally encountered the Moon Jade Star Beast and was killed. The cultivators were waiting here to see who would last until the end. Now that the result was out, they naturally had no interest in staying. Moreover, a fortuitous encounter like this could only be participated in once in a cultivator's life. Even if someone else found the same fortuitous encounter next time, they wouldn't be able to participate in it again. They all prepared to return home. At this moment, another figure suddenly appeared. In an instant, everyone's gaze was focused on him. When they saw him clearly, they all looked puzzled, doubtful, shocked, and astonished. They all thought that Luo Shenxi would be the one to last until the end. They didn't expect that it wasn't him. A guy who came out of nowhere had actually defeated Luo Shenxi. Lu Yi, who had just appeared, had no idea what was going on. When he felt everyone's gaze on him, he raised his left hand slightly and pressed the hilt of the Panshan saber at his waist. He gently rubbed his thumb and lowered his eyes slightly. However, he soon realized that although those people were looking at him, they didn't have any malice or hostility. They were more curious and shocked. He frowned and rushed toward Li Shang and Du Lang in a flash. He wanted to meet up with them first. "Fellow cultivator, please wait." A voice came from behind him. Lu Yi turned around and saw Luo Shenxi leaping out of the crowd and flying over. He stood in front of Lu Yi and looked at him with burning eyes. "What's the matter?" Lu Yi looked at him. Luo Shenxi bowed first and said with a solemn expression, "Fellow cultivator, I want to fight with you." He was really curious about how Lu Yi could last longer than him. Although he knew that Lu Yi was very strong, he was confident that he wouldn't lose to any cultivator of the same level. In this four-way galaxy, he had fought all the famous constellations and never lost. This also established his title as the strongest cultivator in the constellations. He thought that it would be difficult to find a suitable opponent in this four-way galaxy, but he didn't expect another one to appear today. To Luo Shenxi, how could he miss out on such an opportunity? Just the thought of competing with other experts, especially those who were also from the weapon cultivator sect, made him feel impatient and excited. Lu Yi looked him up and down. He didn't feel any malice from him, only a strong desire to fight. He could roughly guess who this person was. If he was really a cultivator from this four-way galaxy, there would be no harm in accepting this challenge. However, he was just a passerby and shouldn't cause any trouble. Moreover, he had a rough idea of Luo Shenxi's strength. He had no problem getting into the top 100 of the Constellation Hall, but getting into the top 50 would be a little difficult. He had defeated many people like this when he was in the middle stage of the Constellation Hall. Now that he was in the late stage, how could he be interested in competing with Luo Shenxi? He only replied indifferently, "I'm not free." Luo Shenxi hurriedly said, "Then when are you free? You can decide the time and place." "I have no problem with that." Lu Yi walked past him and waved his hand. "We'll talk about it when I'm free." Luo Shenxi shouted behind him, "Then it's settled." Many cultivators in the four-way galaxy were dumbfounded. Although they all knew that Luo Shenxi liked to fight with strong cultivators, it was still rare to see him so eager. For a moment, they couldn't understand why Luo Shenxi would do this. Lu Yi lasted longer on Heavenly Dog than Luo Shenxi. This happened in front of everyone's eyes, but this didn't mean that Lu Yi was really strong. Some constellations lasted longer in the early stage than in the late stage. It couldn't be said that those constellations were stronger in the early stage. After Lu Yi met up with Li Shang, he summoned his astral beast and rushed into the depths of the starry sky with Li Shang and Dulang. In the next period of time, he would pass through this barren land, enter the indefinite galaxy, and then cross the entire indefinite. The road ahead was long. After Lu Yi and the others left, the cultivators gathered on Heavenly Dog quickly dispersed as well. Luo Shenxi didn't leave. He just looked in the direction Lu Yi left and asked, "Zhong Yun, didn't the Grand Elder say that he was going to the indefinite realm?" A young man beside him said, "The Grand Elder did say that. Looking at the time, he should be in the middle of preparations. You know that Indefinite and Grand Luo are on good terms. They often have some dealings with each other." Luo Shenxi nodded and turned around. "Let's go home." Even someone like Luo Shenxi couldn't just barge into another galaxy. However, it would be different if he visited Indefinite with his sect's elders. He could see that Lu Yi didn't want to fight him, but he couldn't wait to fight Lu Yi and see who was stronger. This visit with the Grand Elder to Indefinite might give him an opportunity. Of course, even if there wasn't one, he could still create one. In any case, he was determined to fight this battle. Lu Yi sat cross-legged on the planetary boat. He had already handed the control over to Dulang. He was from the indefinite galaxy and was naturally familiar with the route. The Pan Mountain Saber was placed horizontally on his knees. Lu Yi looked down at his weapon, still in disbelief. The main reason was that the scene that happened in the Cyan Palace was too strange. The figure that looked exactly like him had swallowed the Pan Mountain Saber. At that time, he thought that he would never have his saber again, which made him both distressed and angry. Who would have thought that after the figure melted, it would turn into the appearance of the Pan Mountain saber? It looked exactly the same as the Pan Mountain saber. However, he could clearly sense that the Pan Mountain saber was completely different from the one before. This was the message that came from the new Pan Mountain saber when he came into contact with it. It was also the name of the figure. It would be more appropriate to call the Pan Mountain saber the Fong saber, but the word Pan Mountain was still engraved on the hilt. Qi were living creatures, but they weren't living creatures in the traditional sense. They couldn't be considered living creatures either. They were an extremely peculiar existence, so peculiar that Lu Yi had never heard of them before. While he was deep in thought, Li Shang's voice suddenly rang in his ears. Lu Yi, the opportunity that the Qi encountered might be a soldier. Lu Yi was surprised. He had only learned of the Qi's true identity after obtaining it. He didn't expect Li Shang to see through it even though he hadn't participated in the test. He turned to look at Li Shang. Li Shang explained, "The soul race is a rare race, but the soldier race is even rarer. It can even be said that they are one of the rarest races in the world. That's why we know a little about them." End of chapter. Chapter 1540. Ho was indeed from the soldier race. This was something Lu Yi only found out after obtaining him, but Li Shang was able to deduce it in advance. This was probably not just the mutual understanding between rare races. "Sure enough," Li Shang said, "an elder in my race once knew a member of the soldier race a long time ago, so there is information about this in the race. I saw that the test you participated in before seemed to be a test unique to the soldier race. If you can pass the test, you can obtain the loyalty of the soldier race." Although Lu Yi already had Ho, he didn't know much about the soldier race, so he humbly asked, "Can you tell me more about the soldier race?" Li Shang naturally didn't allow it, so he began to explain. According to Li Shang's explanation, the soldier race was an extremely strange race, so strange that it was impossible to determine whether they were living creatures or not, because they had no vitality, but they had their own thoughts and thoughts. The birth of the soldier race could be traced back to an extremely ancient era. No one knew how the soldier race came to be, but now it was known that there were very few of them, and they could no longer give birth to new ones, because the ancient land that gave birth to the soldier race had long been destroyed. In other words, the soldier race in this world was limited, and if one died, there would be one less. Perhaps one day in the future, the soldier race would only exist in some ancient records, and no one would ever see them again. The reason why the soldier race was named Bing was that they were almost exclusively born for weapon cultivators. If a weapon cultivator could pass their test and gain their recognition, they would receive great help. They could transform into any weapon that a weapon cultivator wanted. For example, Ho had turned into the Panshan blade, but before that, he had to devour the Panshan blade. Moreover, the soldier race could grow with the strength of their master. The soldier race that remained in the world today had followed countless powerful masters. It could be said that every soldier race member was an old monster. I suspect that the Rizhao of the four-way galaxy knows the truth, but they don't dare to casually interfere with such an opportunity, because once they do, the difficulty of the test will increase, and they may even die. In the end, Rizhao's strength and knowledge were not something the lunar mansions could compare to. This opportunity had appeared here for 100 years, so it was impossible for Rizhao from the four-star systems not to come and investigate. With their abilities, it was not impossible for them to find the location of the opportunity. However, not a single Rizhao or Yu Yao interfered. They only allowed the lunar mansions to compete and temper themselves. This was because the soldier tribe had followed countless powerful masters. Their strength was incomparable to that of an ordinary Rizhao. If an ordinary Rizhao wanted to subdue the soldier tribe, he would have to risk being killed by the soldier tribe. On the other hand, with Star Constellation's participation, Zhao could guarantee their safety. He could even give them a way out and not let them die in the test. With such concerns, even Rizhao and Yu Yao, who knew the truth about the soldier race, didn't dare to casually search for them. Instead, the constellations of the four directions star systems benefited from this. Hearing this, Lu Ye's heart skipped a beat. Doesn't this mean that if I can obtain the soldier tribe's approval, when the soldier cultivator advances from the constellation realm to the Yu Yao realm, his weapon can also be upgraded to a transcendent artifact? Li Shang said, in terms of quality, every weapon that the soldier tribe transforms into is far more than a transcendent artifact. However, after they're subdued, how much power they can unleash depends on how strong their master is. If a constellation realm cultivator obtains the soldier tribe, he can only unleash the power of a spirit artifact. When he reaches the Yu Yao realm, he can unleash the power of a transcendent artifact. Lu Yi was delighted to hear this. Recently, the upgrade of the Pan Shan saber had been an urgent problem for him. Lu Yi had missed out on 2 Phoenix Skies blue crystals, but he didn't have the time to continue looking for them. He'd planned to look for them again when he returned to the Wanxiang Sea. If he really couldn't find them, he'd shamelessly ask Bansi to buy her Phoenix Skies blue crystal. Unexpectedly, he didn't have to face this problem at all. As she spoke, Li Shang sized up the Pan Shan saber at Lu Ye's waist. She suspected that Lu Yi had already obtained the soldier tribe's approval, but this didn't leave any traces on the surface, so it was even more difficult to ask. Every soldier tribe has its own unique ability. This is the innate ability of the soldier tribe. The soldier tribe elder of my tribe seems to have the power to slash the soul. If the enemy's physical body is slashed, the soul will also be injured. Lu Yi thought that this was similar to the soul-severing saber he'd obtained in the past. However, as his cultivation increased, the soul-severing saber's usefulness decreased. After all, the soul-severing saber's quality wasn't high, so it was difficult for it to cause harm to a constellation realm cultivator. Ever since it became a constellation realm cultivator, the soul-severing saber's usefulness was to facilitate the construction of various spirit inscriptions within the Pan Shan saber, increasing its power. After Qi devoured the Pan Shan saber, the soul-severing saber was also devoured. However, he could sense that the soul-severing saber was still there. Thus, he could still use the soul-severing saber's uniqueness to construct various spirit inscriptions within the Pan Shan saber at any time. As for Qi's special ability, Lu Yi guessed that it had something to do with the strange power lingering around his wounds. That strange power could obstruct the healing of wounds. It was like countless ants biting at a wound. Not only did it obstruct the healing of the wound, but it would also continue to expand as time passed. If Lu Yi hadn't used the talent tree's ability to incinerate Qi's special ability, he wouldn't have been able to win this battle. The biggest possibility was that he would lose too much blood and lose. Then Lu Yi thought of something else. Since the soldier tribe has their own thoughts, then wouldn't Master have no privacy if they were always by Master's side? This made Lu Yi secretly alarmed. When he was intimate with Hua Ci in the future, he would have to put away the Pan Shan saber. Li Shang smiled. That won't happen. Once the soldier tribe is subdued, they will fall into a deep slumber. Only when Master dies in battle will their thoughts awaken. If you really want to subdue the soldier tribe, you can just turn them into ordinary weapons. Lu Yi suddenly recalled Qi's last words. He said he didn't want to sleep for too long, so he didn't want Lu Yi to live for too long. So this was what he was referring to. The soldier tribe's lifespan was almost limitless. They were the oldest race and had followed generations of masters to conquer the world. They had lived for countless years and could be said to be comparable to the reincarnation tree's lifespan. Moreover, the soldier tribe seems to have a special ability that can help their master grow. However, I don't know what kind of ability it is, Li Shang added. She didn't know, but Lu Yi could vaguely sense it. After he poured his spiritual energy and divine sense into the Pan Shan saber, he vaguely felt a strange sensation. Just as Lu Yi was about to give it a try, Du Lang, who was steering the star boat, suddenly shouted, "Brother Lu, someone is chasing us." Upon hearing his words, Lu Yi turned around and discovered that there was indeed a star boat chasing after them at an extremely high speed, rapidly approaching them. After seeing the star boat's appearance, Du Lang couldn't help but frown. It's a star boat from the unbounded realm. Lu Yi thought for a moment and said, "Let's see what they want." After all, they were all going to the unbounded realm. It was normal for them to go in the same direction. However, the other party obviously wasn't going in the same direction. After Lu Ye's starboat slowed down, the other party's starboat overtook them and blocked their path. There were a few familiar figures on the starboat, all of whom Lu Yi had met outside the Heavenly Dog Planet. The one in the lead was Su Dingyang. When they were far away, Lu Yi didn't notice them. Now that they were closer, Lu Yi found that there were more or less traces of Huey's strange power in their bodies. It was obviously left behind by Huey's injuries during the test. The strange power could be neutralized, but the degree of neutralization depended on the cultivator's foundation. Although Su Dingyang and the others were not weak, they obviously couldn't neutralize the strange power in a short time. At this moment, Lu Yi sensed the strange power in their bodies. He even had a feeling that he could control the eruption of the strange power with the Panshan saber. If that was the case, their injuries would definitely worsen quickly. Suppressing his desire to try, Lu Yi stood on the starboat and looked at Su Dingyang and the others indifferently. Du Lang took the initiative to step forward and bowed. "Senior Marshal Brother Su, why are you blocking our path?" Du Lang didn't have a good impression of Su Dingyang. Previously, he and his senior marshal brother had been tempering themselves here while looking for opportunities. In the end, Su Dingyang had seen them and forcefully dragged them away. Later, they encountered a group of star beasts. Du Lang's senior marshal brother died in battle. Su Dingyang saw that the situation was bad and abandoned him to escape. If Lu Yi hadn't appeared in time, Du Lang would have died. However, no matter how much Du Lang hated Su Dingyang, he couldn't show it on his face. Su Dingyang didn't even look at Du Lang, treating him as if he didn't exist. His sharp eyes stared at Lu Yi. After a long while, he said, "You're not a cultivator from Qikong. Where are you from?" In a place like Qikong, Wu Ding knew how many Yu Yao and star mansions there were. There was no such person as Lu Yi. Moreover, Lu Yi had defeated Luo Shenxi in the Heavenly Dog Planet's test. Su Dingyang didn't think that Qikong could produce such a cultivator with its current foundation. However, Lu Yi seemed to be very familiar with Du Lang, which was somewhat thought-provoking. Lu Yi pondered for a moment. He wanted to pass through Wu Ding this time. Although he had Du Lang with him, Qikong was currently in decline and couldn't be the master of Wu Ding Galaxy. When he returned, he still had to discuss this matter with the experts of Wu Ding Realm. Therefore, he couldn't hide it from Su Dingyang. He could only reply, "I'm from Jade Conch Galaxy." Su Dingyang frowned and turned to look at the people around him. He probably wanted to know if they had heard of Jade Conch Galaxy. In the end, they all shook their heads. Su Dingyang couldn't be bothered to probe further. It was nothing more than a foreign galaxy. He said, "No matter where you're from, I want to know if you've obtained anything from Heavenly Dog Planet." When he asked this question, Lu Yi was even more certain of one thing. These star mansions from large domains knew the truth about opportunities. End of chapter. Chapter 1541. How would someone like Du Lang know anything about the soldier tribe? He probably thought that the test was an opportunity. Lu Yi thought the same at first, until Qi swallowed his Panshan blade. However, Su Dingyang and Luo Shenxi were different. Their realms were guarded by Sunshine Realm elites. Since the Sunshine Realm elites knew about the soldier tribe, there was no reason for them not to tell their juniors and let them fight for the soldier tribe. The benefits from the test were secondary. Qi was their real goal. Unfortunately, no one had succeeded in the past 100 years. "Yes," Lu Yi answered. Su Dingyang was delighted. He asked eagerly, "Can I take a look?" Lu Yi revealed a hesitant expression, seemingly unwilling to do so, but still tossed a storage ring over to Yang Kai. Su Dingyang took the storage ring and checked it. But soon, the joy on his face disappeared. He looked at Lu Yi in disbelief. "This is what you got from Heavenly Dog?" The storage ring contained many Heavenly Dog Star Beast corpses, but what he wanted to see was not these. Star Beast corpses were valuable, but they were nothing to Su Dingyang. "That's all." Lu Yi looked at him indifferently. Su Dingyang frowned, then looked at the Panshan blade at his waist. "I want to see your blade." Lu Yi shook his head. "You're also a weapon cultivator. You should know what a weapon means to a weapon cultivator. My blade can't be seen." Su Dingyang stared at him. "What if I insist on seeing it?" He didn't think that a foreign galaxy like Lu Yi would be able to subdue the soldier tribe inside the heavenly dog star. Before they set off, Rizhao had told him that the soldier tribe was not so easy to subdue. Not to mention 100 years, even if they had 1,000 years or 10,000 years, the cultivators of the 4 galaxies might not be able to subdue them. Every ancient soldier tribe had followed too many powerful masters, and each of those masters was a rare genius. Ordinary cultivators were simply not worthy of their attention. Reality proved that even someone like Luo Shenxi had not succeeded. How could an outsider like Lu Yi succeed? But Lu Yi lasted longer than Luo Shenxi on Heavenly Dog. Just in case, Su Dingyang wanted to see Lu Ye's blade. Because if Lu Yi really subdued the Bin tribe, the saber might change. Su Dingyang's expression was resolute. He had no intention of putting Lu Yi in his eyes. He had this kind of confidence. He was born in a realm like the unbounded realm. Although his strength was not as strong as Luo Shenxi, he did not feel that he was inferior to the other constellations. The atmosphere became heavy, and the auras of the few cultivators besides Su Dingyang also gradually became dangerous. Du Lang's expression turned ugly as he said in a low voice, "Senior brother Su, brother Lu is my friend. He's just passing by." "Senior brother Su Yu." Before he could finish, a person besides Su Dingyang coldly said, "Shut up, you have no right to speak here." Du Lang still wanted to argue, but Lu Yi raised his hand slightly and stopped him. He looked calmly at Su Dingyang and the others. "Do you really want to see?" Su Dingyang said, "If it's convenient for you, of course. It's convenient." As soon as Lu Yi finished speaking, he had already jumped off the planetary ship and pounced forward. His saber was unsheathed, and a clanging sound rang out as saber light bloomed. Du Lang didn't even see what had happened. By the time he came to his senses, Lu Yi was already standing on the star boat opposite him. He was holding the storage ring that he had tossed to Su Dingyang with one hand and a long saber with the other. There were traces of blood on the blade of the saber. Su Dingyang and the others retreated in all directions as if they had been struck by lightning. They were all covered in blood and looked terrified. Although these people were strong, they were still a lot weaker than Luo Shenxi. Even if Luo Shenxi was here, Lu Yi could take him down with a few slashes, let alone Su Dingyang and the others. Su Dingyang and the others hurriedly stabilized themselves. The shock in their eyes had not yet dissipated. They all looked at Lu Yi in disbelief. They finally understood why Luo Shenxi valued Lu Yi so much. At that time, everyone thought that Luo Shenxi was deliberately mystifying things. Now, they knew that Luo Shenxi was indeed extraordinary when it came to judging people. Lu Yi looked at Su Dingyang and asked indifferently, "Have you seen it?" Su Dingyang's face was pale. Obviously, he had not recovered from the shock of that terrifying slash. If Lu Yi had wanted to take his life, he definitely would not have been able to block it. He nodded instinctively. Only then did Lu Yi sheath his saber. "Thank you for your hospitality." He returned to his planetary ship in a flash. Du Lang did not need to be told and hurriedly drove the planetary ship into the distance. Only when Lu Ye's planetary ship disappeared from their sight did Su Dingyang and the others slowly come back to their senses. The cultivator who had scolded Du Lang just now had a look of lingering fear on his face. "This person is not weaker than Luo Shenxi." Su Dingyang said bitterly, "He's stronger than Luo Shenxi." The others had never fought Luo Shenxi before, so they did not know how strong Luo Shenxi was. However, Su Dingyang had been defeated by Luo Shenxi before, so he could clearly judge this point. Although Luo Shenxi was strong, it was impossible for him to injure him with a single move. However, that person who claimed to be from the Jade Conch Galaxy had done it. What was the Jade Conch Galaxy? Could a constellation be so strong? "Senior brother Su, did he get it?" someone asked. Su Dingyang lowered his head and looked at the wound on his abdomen. Blood was flowing out of it, but there was no strange energy lingering around it. He shook his head slowly. "I don't think so. The Bin race on Heavenly Dog Planet has a strange power that makes it very difficult to heal. You should know that. However, the saber in this person's hand does not have that kind of power." The cultivator nodded. "I knew it. How could an outsider be so lucky as to be able to subdue the Bin race? Let's go back to indefinite. Su Dingyang called out. Looking at the direction the planetary ship was heading, it was obviously heading to indefinite galaxy. He was indeed not a match for the other party, but as long as he reached indefinite, it would be his territory. How could he be afraid that the other party would not submit to him? He could not let go of the saber that had injured him so easily. We should have killed them, Li Shang said from the planetary ship. That Su Dingyang doesn't look like a magnanimous person. He's from indefinite. If you go to indefinite again, he definitely won't let you go. Lu Yi shook his head and didn't explain. How could he not see through Su Dingyang's character? If he could, he also wanted to kill him and end this once and for all. However, Su Dingyang and the others had left Heavenly Dog Planet at the same time as him. They should have been seen by many people. If Su Dingyang and the others died, even if there was no evidence, the experts of Indefinite Realm would not let them go. That would be detrimental to what he was going to do next. He did not want to have any conflicts with the Indefinite Realm. Instead, he wanted to build a good relationship with them and reach some cooperation. However, it was not that easy. After all, he was only a constellation. His strength was too weak in the Starry River. It was very difficult for him to be qualified to talk to the experts of Indefinite on equal terms. Su Dingyang had only wanted to see his saber because he wanted to know if he had subdued the Bin race. He had injured a few of them, but did not leave behind any strange energy. This way, he would be able to clear his name. Su Dingyang and the others probably didn't know that he could control Hui's strange energy. It was a characteristic of Hui itself. As its master, he could control it as he pleased. The star boat sailed on without any disturbances. Occasionally, Dou Lang would avoid star beasts, glancing at Lu Yi from time to time with envy in his heart. Back then, they were both Divine Sea experts and had participated in the Battle of Divine Sea Experts of the Alpha Origin stage. However, after so many years, he was only at the early stage while Lu Yi was already at the advanced stage. The difference between their cultivation bases was like heaven and earth. The key point was that the strength that Lu Yi displayed was too unbelievable. Su Dingyang was already an extremely outstanding star constellation of this generation in the unbounded realm. He was also in the late stage of cultivation like Lu Yi, but in the end, he was injured in a single exchange, and the people who were injured along with him were his fellow disciples. If he had such potential, he would not have to worry about not being strong enough to save the Chi Sky continent in the future. But in the end, it was just a fantasy. He knew his own situation. Now that the Red Sky realm was in decline, the foundation of the realm was gone, and the talents were withered. He was afraid that in a few years, the Red Sky realm would be reduced to a mortal realm. At that time, there would be no more cultivators in the realm. Every time he thought of this, he felt an inexplicable heartache. With Dou Lang steering the star boat and Li Shang protecting him, Lu Yi did not need to worry about anything. He immersed his consciousness into the Pan Mountain saber and slowly poured his spiritual power into it. Inexplicably, he had already appeared in a large green hall. The green hall was the place where he had fought with Hui earlier. At that moment, a figure stood not far away from Lu Yi. That figure was not a Ho, because it was slender and looked valiant. It was a woman. The woman was extremely beautiful, with a pair of sword-like eyebrows that reached her temples. However, she was clearly not human because of the two furry ears on her head. She looked like a rabbit that had turned into a demon. She's probably a monster, Lu Yi thought to himself. At this moment, the woman who looked like a rabbit demon stood quietly in place with a long saber in her hand. Her hands were placed on the saber's hilt, and there was not the slightest trace of her aura. Her long saber looked similar to Lu Ye's Pan Mountain saber, but it was heavier. When Lu Yi looked at her, her eyes slowly opened. In a split second, two golden lights bloomed from her eyes. Lu Yi couldn't help but tense up. For some inexplicable reason, she felt as if she wasn't facing a rabbit, but a fierce tiger. With a clang, the rabbit demon slowly unsheathed her saber and said, "Baizhen, Qing Li of the monster race." She was indeed a cultivator of the monster race. Qing Li should be her name. As for Baizhen, Lu Yi guessed that was her origin. She was either a star system or a realm. However, Li did not have much time to think. As soon as she unsheathed her saber, Qin Li pounced at him like a rabbit. Lu Yi hurriedly raised his saber to meet her. But before he could do anything, the saber light bloomed. Then, it seemed like an ancient beast was opening its bloody mouth and biting at him with its fangs bared. End of chapter. Chapter 1542. On the star boat, Lu Yi opened his eyes with a pained expression. This was the result of having one of his divine consciousnesses destroyed. However, he didn't look tired at all. Instead, his eyes glowed with excitement. He realized that subduing the qi would bring him far more benefits than he had expected. Not to mention the fact that the Ho was a soldier, it could grow as its master grew stronger. It could save Lu Yi from all sorts of problems when it came to upgrading the Panshan blade in the future. The Ho itself was a huge treasure, a treasure waiting to be exploited by Lu Yi. Li Shang had mentioned before that soldiers seemed to have the ability to help their masters grow. However, she didn't know what this ability was. Lu Yi had sensed it back then, but when he was about to investigate, Su Dingyang and the others caught up with him, so he didn't have time to investigate. Until the battle just now, since ancient times, the Qi had followed many powerful masters. Without exception, these masters were all soldier cultivators. Naturally, many of them used the saber. Each of these cultivators could be said to be a peerless genius. Their achievements were far beyond what ordinary cultivators could compare with. Many of them were famous and terrifying existences even in the entire Sunshine region. They were all overlords of a region. If they wanted to, they could leave their mark in the Qi rather than calling it a mark. It was more like a kind of inheritance. For example, when Lu Yi met Qing Li, what he saw was not Qing Li herself, but a manifestation of the mark she left in the Qi. The slash she used on Lu Yi was the essence of her inheritance. Under that slash, Lu Yi couldn't fight back at all. If they met in the real world, it meant that Qing Li had the ability to kill Lu Yi with a single slash. Of course, this didn't mean that Qing Li had this ability when she was in the late constellation realm. When Qing Li left her mark, it could have been Rizhao or someone else. With Rizhao's foundation and skills, even if Qing Li used the same strength as Lu Yi wouldn't have been able to resist. If Lu Yi grew stronger in the future, he could also leave his mark in the Qi for the benefit of his descendants. Of course, even if Lu Yi wanted to do so, it would be many years later. Moreover, not everyone could leave behind a mark inside the Bai. In order to do so, one had to first obtain the Bai's approval. If the Bai didn't agree, then forcefully leaving behind a mark wouldn't last long before it dissipated. Lu Ye's combat skills and instincts were honed through life and death situations. Up until now, the biggest problem he had encountered was that there was no one to guide him systematically. In the beginning, the Jade Blood sect was in decline. The sect master was a Dharma cultivator and a body cultivator, second senior sister was a medical cultivator, and fourth senior brother was a sword cultivator. There was no one who could teach him at all. However, third senior brother had given him some saber techniques before they met. However, Lu Ye's strength grew too fast and soon exceeded the limit of the 9 regions cultivators, so there was no one to teach him. Previously, the Constellation Hall had given Lu Yi the inheritance of the 10,000 tidal waves, which made Lu Yi very happy. This was because he finally had something that was different from the Tyrant Saber technique. However, it was still unable to solve the fundamental problem that he had to face. As his cultivation level gradually increased, his saber techniques should also grow correspondingly. It was no longer enough to rely solely on the tempering of life and death situations. The imprint inheritance within the Panther was what he urgently needed at the moment. Qing Li was only the first. There were countless imprint inheritances hidden within the Panther. As long as Lu Yi could defeat the imprints left behind by the powerhouses, he would be able to see the essence of their inheritances and absorb their nutrients to promote his own growth. Suppressing the excitement in his heart, Lu Yi was not in a hurry to try again. Instead, he recalled the slash that Qing Li had just made. Without a doubt, that slash was not just a simple slash. It was the condensation of an entire saber technique system. Qing Li had condensed all of her saber techniques into that one slash. It was just like how the three forms of the tyrant saber were not just the three forms. If one simply cultivated the three forms and imitated them, they would not be able to comprehend the subtleties of the tyrant saber technique. The power that Qingli had used back then was completely the same as her own power. It could be said that there was no difference at all. However, he was still killed by a single slash. This meant that Qing Li's saber techniques were far superior to his own. This did not make Lu Yi depressed. Instead, it made him excited. This was because he saw the possibility of his own growth. After pondering for a long time, Lu Yi once again focused his mind and entered the green hall. He looked up and saw that Qing Li still looked the same as before. Her hands were placed on the hilt of her saber, and she stood there with the support of her saber. However, she quickly opened her eyes. Once again, Lu Yi saw two spots of golden light blooming. This time, unlike the last time, Qing Li did not announce her name or origin. Instead, she attacked directly. Lu Yi thought that he would be able to hold on for a little longer. However, after Qing Li attacked, he realized that he was wrong. He could still vaguely see a bloody mouth opening up to bite him. Then, his mind retreated from the green hall. It was truly a fiend with its fangs bared. Lu Ye's divine consciousness was destroyed again. This little damage to his divine consciousness did not affect him. If he wanted to recover, he could use the spirit refining grass. After thinking about it for a long time, Lu Yi entered the green hall for the third time. Time passed. Lu Yi sat on the star boat with the Pan Mountain saber across his knees. He poured his spiritual energy into the saber from time to time. Occasionally, he would take out spiritual jades or spirit refining grass to refine them. To outsiders, he seemed to be cultivating. Li Shang was increasingly certain that Lu Yi had subdued the Bin tribe. Otherwise, there was no reason for him to behave so strangely along the way. However, after interacting with Lu Yi for a long time, she gradually realized that he was extraordinary. She had a vague feeling that one day in the future, Lu Yi would definitely have a place in the vast starry sky. Being able to make friends with such a weak person seemed to be a good thing. Traveling through the starry sky was extremely boring. Although the scenery in the starry sky was beautiful and spectacular, after a long time, it became insignificant. However, this kind of boring travel was something that every cultivator had to experience. The starry sky was too vast, and there was no way to arrive at a destination casually. After departing from the heavenly dog star, it took a full 3.5 months for the group to pass through the barren star field and enter the indefinite galaxy. They had just entered the indefinite galaxy. If they wanted to reach a certain realm, they would have to travel for a period of time. Lu Yi did not notice the passage of time at all. He was wholeheartedly focused on fighting Qing Li. Over the past 3 months, he had lost count of how many times he had been killed by Qing Li. Finally, he had learned something. Although he was still no match for Qing Li, at least he would not be killed the moment he entered. He would finally be able to spar with Qing Li. This was undoubtedly a huge improvement. While fighting with Qing Li, it was also an opportunity for Lu Yi to understand the essence of the inheritance she had left behind. Lu Yi eagerly absorbed the nutrients left by Qing Li, feeling grateful to this ancestor who had once obtained the pyrolite. Lu Yi also found that his spirit sea had grown quite a bit. This was because he often needed to refine the spirit refining grass to replenish his spirit sense. This also strengthened his spirit sea imperceptibly. While Lu Yi was refining the spirit jade, Du Lang said, "Brother Lu, now that we have entered the indefinite galaxy, where do you plan to go next?" Only then did Lu Yi remember some of his previous plans. Recently, he had been so engrossed in fighting Qing Li that he had forgotten about other things. After thinking for a moment, Lu Yi asked, "How far is the Red Sky realm from the indefinite realm?" Du Lang replied, "The two realms are not far apart. With the speed of Brother Lu's starboat, it should only take half a month." This was also the reason why the Red Sky realm wanted to rely on the indefinite realm after it had weakened. It was close enough. If it was too far away, the Red Sky realm would not rely on the indefinite realm. There were other realms in the galaxy that they could choose from, but they were not as powerful as the indefinite realm. Then let's go to the Red Sky realm first. Allow me to pay a visit to the seniors of your realm. It was not easy to form a partnership with the sunshine of the indefinite realm. Lu Yi did not have the qualifications to communicate with the experts of the sunshine realm. In the eyes of the sunshine realm, who had lived for countless years, Lu Yi was just a child. Therefore, Lu Yi thought that perhaps he could borrow the strength of the red sky realm as a springboard. The red sky realm was weak and their realms were weak. No matter what the indefinite realm thought, the red sky realm would definitely not refuse if they knew that they could go to the Wanxiang Sea. After all, they were the ones who could not wait to change. Therefore, Lu Yi planned to negotiate with the Yu Yao of the red sky realm first, and then have the Yu Yao of the red sky realm introduce the experts of the indefinite realm. If everything went smoothly, it should not be difficult to form a partnership with the indefinite realm. Du Lang was clearly very happy to hear Lu Ye's words. He immediately steered the star boat and flew towards the red sky continent according to the star chart. The environment of the indefinite galaxy was undoubtedly different from that of the barren star field. There were stars and realms full of vitality everywhere. This was actually the environment of a normal galaxy. Lu Yi was still struggling with Qing Li, and his progress was good. He estimated that he should be able to fully comprehend the inheritance left behind by Qing Li in a short period of time. This made him secretly look forward to it. He did not know what kind of wondrous inheritance Qing Li would have after this. 2 months later, two figures clashed fiercely in the green hall of the Hui. The sounds of sabers rang out, and the sabers were ferocious. As their figures crossed each other, their sabers slashed down. Intense spiritual energy surged, and there was a slight stalemate. Qing Li's figure suddenly floated back. Lu Yi looked pensive and did not pursue. He saw Qing Li put away her saber, then nodded slightly to Lu Yi, and her figure disappeared. Lu Yi understood that he must have comprehended the essence of the inheritance left behind by Qing Li and passed her test. After nearly half a year of struggle, he gradually grew stronger after being slashed again and again. It was not easy to achieve this. Compared to the fierce attacks of the Tyrant Saber technique and the continuous waves of the tidal sea, Qing Li's saber technique inheritance was more about flexibility. Fortunately, when he subdued Hui, he saw his various shortcomings. Otherwise, it would not have been so easy to pass Qing Li's test. End of chapter. Chapter 1543. Almost at the same time that Qing Li's figure disappeared, another figure appeared in front of Lu Yi. When he looked closely, he could not help but feel surprised. Because the figure that appeared after Qing Li was actually a member of the Ghost Clan. Compared to many other clans that had similar figures to humans, the Ghost Clan's characteristics were very obvious. This was because their exposed skin was covered with strange ghost tattoos. These ghost tattoos were innate, and some were cultivated. They were not the same as ordinary tattoos. The Ghost Clan also had a master swordsman? Lu Yi was surprised. Because of the Ghost Clan's uniqueness, they had unparalleled talent in the path of ghost cultivation. It could be said that every Ghost Clan member was a natural-born ghost cultivator. They were best at concealment and assassination. Fighting head-on like a weapon cultivator was not their forte. Just as Lu Yi was thinking, the Ghost Clan member slowly opened his eyes. There seemed to be ghost tattoos in his eyes, making his eyes look extremely strange. He slowly unsheathed his sword and said, "Ghost Clan of the Netherworld, Yan Shi." The moment he finished speaking, he had already become one with his sword. He turned into a sword light and slashed towards Lu Yi. The power of his attack was not inferior to Qing Li's at all. Lu Yi quickly raised his sword to block, but in the next moment, a scene that shocked him appeared. The sword light that was slashing towards him seemed to have a life of its own. It bypassed his counterattack and attacked from the side. The long sword in Lu Ye's hand sank instantly. If he had not fought with Qing Li for half a year, he would most likely have met with misfortune when facing Yan Shi's attack. But in the fight with Qing Li, he had also grown tremendously. So even though Yan Shi's attack was strange, Lu Yi was still able to see through it. He thought that he could block Yan Shi's attack. Unexpectedly, he did not feel any force at all. When he looked again, Yan Shi had already flashed to the other side and slashed his sword again. After a moment, Lu Ye's mind retreated from the green hall. Although he had been defeated in the fight with Yan Shi, His eyes could not hide the excitement in them. Yan Shi's swordsmanship was completely different from Qing Li's. Compared to Qing Li's agility, Yan Shi's swordsmanship could be described as elusive. Yan Shi's battle style was not like that of an orthodox armament cultivator at all, because he did not face the enemy head-on at all. When they crossed swords, his figure flitted here and there like a gust of wind, making it impossible for people to catch a trace of him. But when he made a move, it was like a thunderbolt, making it hard for others to resist. Yan Shi's blade technique inheritance was undoubtedly very mysterious. Lu Yi faintly felt that if he could understand the essence of it, he would no longer need to be afraid of being surrounded and attacked by others. Thinking back to the battle just now, no matter how fast he moved, he was unable to hurt Yan Shi at all. Instead, he was slowly disintegrated under Yan Shi's attacks. Regardless of whether it was Qing Li or Yan Shi, they were able to use the same power as Lu Yi. This was because the power that enabled them to use their knife skills came from Lu Yi himself. However, under the same level of power, Lu Yi was no match for Qing Li when he first met her. Now, he was still no match for Yan Shi. Lu Yi knew that this was not because he was weaker than them, but because when the two of them left behind their imprints, their horizons and experience far exceeded his. He spent half a year to understand Qing Li's knife skills, and his own body had grown considerably. He believed that this time, he would not need as much time to understand Yan Shi's knife skills, because as he grew, the imprints left behind by these old seniors would become easier for him. Just as he was about to give it another try, he heard Dulang say, "Brother Lu, Qi Kong has arrived." Hearing this, Lu Yi looked up and saw a realm appear in front of him. Looking from afar, it was a mix of blue and yellow, and the entire realm seemed to be stained with streaks of stripes. The current Lu Yi could not be considered a greenhorn. After traveling in the galaxy for so many years, he had seen many realms, big and small, but he had not seen what a top realm looked like. As such, he could roughly tell whether a realm was strong or weak just by looking at it from afar. Needless to say, Qi Kong gave him a bad feeling, like a terminally ill old man. This was undoubtedly a sign that a cultivation realm was approaching its end. With the help of the insight spiritual inscriptions, under careful observation, the energy in the galaxy did not show any signs of being absorbed by Qi Kong. Instead, Qi Kong's foundation seemed to be flowing into the galaxy. Normally, a realm with vitality would absorb the energy of the galaxy to slowly strengthen itself. As the realm's foundation strengthened, the realm's level would gradually increase. However, this process was generally very long and could easily take millions of years. There were not many growth-type realms like Jiuzhou that could take the initiative to absorb the foundation of other realms to improve themselves. Qi Kong had already shown signs of approaching its end 1,000 years ago, and today, this process was getting faster and faster. Generally speaking, there would be cultivators patrolling and guarding the nearby space of a large realm to prevent the invasion of foreign enemies or star beasts, but Qi Kong seemed to be completely unguarded. Along the way, Lu Yi did not see many cultivators from Qi Kong at all. Occasionally, he would see them, but they were in a hurry. Du Lang steered the star boat into Qi Kong continent, and they did not encounter any inspection or investigation. When they entered a place where a sect was located, Yu Yao's divine sense faintly probed, but she quickly withdrew it. This was undoubtedly the sect where Du Lang came from. There were not many cultivators above the constellation in Qi Kong now, and Du Lang's status here was not low. After some arrangements, he settled Lu Yi and Li Shang down, and then said, "Brother Lu, I will go and report to Master. If Master summons you, I will inform Brother Lu." "Of course." Lu Yi nodded. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. This was Du Lang's territory, so he naturally had to listen to his arrangements. After Du Lang left, Lu Yi looked at Li Shang. "Do you want to hide?" After all, Li Shang was from the Soul clan, so it was not convenient for him to expose himself in front of outsiders. Constellation might not be able to see through it, but Yu Yao might not. Li Shang thought for a moment and nodded. "Then I will hide in your divine ocean." Although he could attach his soul to Lu Yi, it would consume Li Shang's energy. There was no need to hide in his divine ocean. Lu Yi opened his divine ocean, and Li Shang entered. It was unknown when Du Lang would reply, but Lu Yi was not in a hurry. He continued to fight with Yan Shi in the Blue Hall. At the same time, in a large hall, Du Lang stepped in and walked in front of an old man who was sitting cross-legged. He respectfully bowed and said, "Master." The old man did not respond, so Du Lang waited quietly. After a long time, the old man slowly opened his eyes and glanced at Du Lang. He sighed softly. "I already know about your senior martial brother Yu. His fate is as it should be. There is no need to be sad." The senior martial brother Yu the old man spoke of was the constellation who had died in the mouth of the heavenly dog in the desolate star field. Du Lang said angrily, "If Su Dingyang hadn't dragged us to provoke that group of star beasts, senior martial brother Yu wouldn't have died in vain. How hateful of that Su Dingyang to abandon me after senior martial brother Yu's death and escape on his own." The old man snorted and scolded. Not to mention that Su Dingyang is a cultivator from another realm and is not related to you. Even if you are really from the same sect, you have the freedom to escape when you are in danger. Du Lang, the life of a cultivator is ultimately in their own hands. You can't pin your hopes on the mercy of others. Du Lang lowered his head and clenched his fists. This disciple understands the principle, but this disciple is not willing. The old man looked at Du Lang and let out a long sigh. "If you are really unwilling to accept this, then work hard to become stronger. If there comes a day when you become a sunshine, perhaps you will have the opportunity to find a way out for us red sky cultivators." That being said, sunshine was very difficult. Red Sky Continent had not seen sunshine for many years. Looking at the entire indefinite galaxy, only the indefinite realm had sunshine. Changing the topic, the old man asked, "How did you escape?" Du Lang hurriedly said, "This disciple was lucky. I met a friend who saved my life when I was in danger. That was how I was able to return." The old man was a little surprised. Du Lang was his disciple. He basically knew who he knew and who he had befriended. There were not many people who could be called friends by Du Lang. The old man could not help but wonder who had saved him. "Master, you have seen that person before," Du Lang said. The old man raised his eyebrows. "Is it that Qin kid from the eroding cloud realm?" The eroding cloud realm was also a realm of the indefinite galaxy. The old man knew that Du Lang had a good relationship with a constellation with the surname Qin in the eroding cloud realm. If there was one of Du Lang's few friends who could save Du Lang in that situation, it would be this Qin kid. "It's not senior martial brother Qin." Du Lang shook his head. "Master, do you still remember when you took me to participate in the Battle of the Divine Ocean at the Reincarnation Tree?" The old man pondered for a moment. The scene back then was still vivid in his mind. He was surprised. "You couldn't have met Lu Yi of the Nine Heavens, right?" During the Battle of the Divine Ocean, Du Lang had only stayed in the Alpha Origin stage for a month before coming out. The old man knew that Du Lang had only met one person inside, and that was Lu Yi of the Nine Heavens. The master and disciple could have left earlier, but they had stayed because Du Lang wanted to see how long Lu Yi could last. As a result, he saw the birth of a miracle. Lu Yi of the Nine Heavens had won first place in the Battle of the Divine Ocean with an absolute advantage. Du Lang suddenly mentioning the Battle of the Divine Ocean made the old man's mind extremely sharp. Du Lang said excitedly, "Master is right, the one who saved me was Lu Yi of the Nine Heavens. Why would he go to the desolate star region?" The old man was surprised. Although he did not know which galaxy the Nine Heavens realm was in, it was definitely not one of the four galaxies. If it was, the old man would have heard about it long ago. "Disciple doesn't know." Du Lang shook his head. He was also very curious about why Lu Yi was in the desolate star region, but this was not something he could inquire about casually. The old man said, "If I remember correctly, that young man was only an 8th order divine ocean cultivator back then, one minor realm lower than you, right?" "Yes," Du Lang nodded. The old man said, "Such a character is bound to achieve great things in the future. Since you and him are connected by fate, you might as well make friends with him. Even if you can't borrow his strength in the future, you can be proud to have such a friend." Chapter 1544. While speaking, the old man thought of a problem and asked in confusion, "It's only been a few years. That young man's cultivation should be about the same as yours." Even Su Dingyang fled at the sight of him, so how did he have the ability to save you? Du Lang's expression turned solemn. "It's hard to believe, but honored master, Brother Lu is now at the late stage of the constellation realm." What? The old man was shocked. Late stage of the constellation realm? Are you sure? If he didn't know his disciple's character, the old man would have thought that he was joking with him. It was shocking that a cultivator could cultivate from the 8th order divine sea to the late stage of the constellation realm in such a short time. Du Lang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Honored master, how could I be wrong about this?" Moreover, Luo Shenxi even gathered thousands of people to go to the heavenly dog star. Even if I was wrong, Luo Shenxi wouldn't be. In the test of the opportunity on the heavenly dog star, Brother Lu lasted longer than Luo Shenxi and was the last to come out. Impossible. The old man only felt that his cognition had been completely overturned. How could the cultivation of the constellation realm be so simple? Even if there were abundant resources, one still needed time to refine them. How could a person's cultivation have such a huge growth in less than 10 years? But soon, the old man thought of another person. It was the person who brought Lu Ye from the 9 heavens to participate in the divine sea battle. At that time, that person casually took out a 9-star treasure and threw it into the reincarnation tree's treasure pool, winning a lot in the end. The old man had seen that person from afar and felt that his cultivation was unfathomable. Although he couldn't see what his cultivation was with his eyesight, he could tell that this person must be a top cultivator from Rizhao's attitude towards him. His strength was so great that even those from the top realms were afraid of him. Lu Ye from the 9 heavens had such a master as his backing, so everything seemed to be logical. All kinds of thoughts flashed through the old man's mind. He realized that he couldn't treat Lu Ye from the 9 heavens as a simple constellation realm junior. He had a very powerful master supporting him. Collecting his thoughts, the old man said, "Remember the kindness of saving your life. Even if you don't have the ability to repay him now, if he has any requests in the future, as long as they don't conflict with your ideals and don't do anything evil, you should do your best to help him." Du Lang replied respectfully, "This disciple will remember Shizuan's teachings." He then changed the topic. "Shizuan, Brother Lu said that he wants to pay you a visit. I wonder if Shizuan?" Hearing this, the old man smiled. "Since he is your savior, and you met him when you were still young, how can this old man not fulfill his wish? Go ahead and make the arrangements." If Lu Yi was just Du Lang's savior, it wouldn't matter whether he met him or not. Lu Yi only wanted to visit him out of respect for his seniors. Even if he met Lu Yi, it would only make Lu Yi cautious, so he might as well not meet him. However, considering that there was such a powerful expert behind Lu Yi, the old man felt that it was better to meet him. Du Lang replied and retreated respectfully. Inside the guest hall, Lu Yi was once again beheaded by Yan Shi, causing him to feel a slight pain in his head. When he opened his eyes, he was about to think about the gains and losses of the battle just now when his expression suddenly froze. Because just half a foot in front of him, a face that seemed to be carved from jade was staring at him with a pair of clear eyes that were filled with curiosity. Lu Yi was startled and instinctively raised his hand to press the hilt of his sword, almost slashing it out. However, when he saw who the other party was, he held himself back. The one staring at him was none other than the little girl he had rescued from the Mist Dragon. Since the day he rescued this little girl, she had been in a coma. Li Shang, who had been taking care of her, had repeatedly checked on her condition, only to find that the soul-devouring aphids in her spirit sea had disappeared, but she still hadn't woken up and there was still vitality in her body. It had been half a year, and Lu Yi had long become accustomed to her being in a coma. Who would have thought that when he opened his eyes this time, she would wake up and stare at him from such a close distance? This little girl looked like a little girl, about 5 or 6 years old, but Lu Yi wasn't naive enough to think she was really a little girl. The other party might be an old monster who had lived for who knows how many years. As for why she appeared in the appearance of a little girl, Lu Yi didn't know. There were many wonderful secret techniques in this world, many of which had miraculous powers. "You're awake?" Lu Yi asked calmly, his right hand still resting on the hilt of his mountain plate saber. Although he didn't feel any malice from the other party's eyes, it was always better to be safe than sorry. If this little girl opened her mouth and turned it into a bloody maw, he would be in deep trouble. The little girl's eyes lit up for a moment before she opened her mouth and called out in a crisp voice, "Father!" Lu Yi was stunned for a moment, thinking there was something wrong with his ears and couldn't help frowning. "What? Father?" The little girl smiled brightly and threw herself at Lu Yi, crashing into his arms and wrapping her arms around his neck. Lu Yi was caught off guard and was thrown onto the bed. This time, Lu Yi finally heard clearly and couldn't believe his ears. He had imagined all kinds of possibilities after this little girl woke up, and it wouldn't be strange if she bit the hand that fed her, but she actually called him father. What kind of situation was this? "Father, father." The little girl was still calling out, clearly very happy, as if she really was Lu Ye's daughter, and reuniting with him after a long separation filled her with joy and joy. Lu Ye's entire body stiffened. He was an expert in life and death battles, but when such a delicate little girl threw herself into his arms and called him daddy, his heart almost melted. Lu Ye didn't know what to do. The little girl even rubbed her face against his, a look of enjoyment on her face. "Li Shang, save me." After a short moment of thought, Lu Yi finally remembered that he wasn't alone and hurriedly called out to Li Shang, who was hiding in his divine sea, for help. Li Shang was alarmed. She had been hiding here all this time, so she had no idea what was going on outside. When she heard Lu Ye's cry for help, she thought Lu Yi had encountered some kind of attack, so she quickly flashed out. In her hand was the soul tool bronze ring she obtained from the Great Fortune Roulette. Then she saw an extremely strange scene. Lu Yi was lying on the bed, as if he had been hit by a body-securing talisman. A small figure was crawling on his chest, intimately snuggling in his arms. For eyes met, Li Shang was shocked. She woke up. After taking care of this little girl for half a year, although there was no communication between them, Li Shang was still very happy to see her wake up. But this scene puzzled her. "What's going on?" "Save me." Lu Yi fiercely winked at her. How would Li Shang know how to save her? The little girl suddenly got up from Lu Ye's body and turned to look at Li Shang. She was startled for a moment before she threw herself at Li Shang. Opening her pink arms, she bumped into Li Shang's chest and shouted, "Mother!" Li Shang also stiffened, the corners of her eyes twitching a few times as she looked at Lu Yi. "What did she call me?" Lu Yi got up and quietly walked to the side, tidying up his clothes without saying a word so as not to stir up trouble. "Mother!" The little girl shouted again. This time Li Shang finally determined what she was shouting about. Not knowing whether to laugh or cry, she said, "Girl, you've got the wrong person. I'm not your mother." This time it was the little girl's turn to stiffen. Then she looked up at Li Shang with her clear eyes. Her eyes became watery at a speed visible to the naked eye, then tears began to flow down her cheeks like pearls from a broken necklace. She pitifully asked, "Mother, you don't want me anymore?" "I'm not your mother." Li Shang weakly defended herself. She was a soul race, how could she give birth to a human? It would have been better if she didn't say this, but as soon as she said this, the little girl burst into tears, crying like she was heartbroken, as if she had encountered the most grievous thing in the world. Li Shang was dumbfounded, quickly turning to look at Lu Yi, wanting to get some help from him. Lu Yi scratched his head, thinking for a moment, then suddenly his eyes lit up and he nodded to Li Shang, indicating that this little girl's brain was damaged. Because the little girl had been tortured into a coma by the soul-devouring aphids before, when Lu Yi entered her divine sea to investigate, he found that her divine sea had dried up, only her soul avatar was wrapped in a layer of inexplicable strength, allowing her to survive. He didn't know how long she had been tortured by the soul-devouring aphids, but no matter who this little girl was before, it was likely her mind had been damaged. At this moment, the little girl was like a newborn who had hatched from an egg. After breaking the shell, the first thing she saw was her parents. Lu Yi felt that this should be the reason why the little girl called him and Li Shang father and mother, otherwise there was no way to explain the situation in front of him. Li Shang also woke up, looking at the little girl crying in her arms, knowing that at this time she couldn't seriously explain anything, so she quickly coaxed her. After all, she had taken care of this little girl for half a year, so her feelings for her were deeper than Lu Ye's, and she was a woman, so her thoughts were much more delicate. After a while of coaxing, the little girl stopped crying, perhaps because she was tired from crying, or perhaps because of the problem with her divine sea. She snuggled into Li Shang's arms and fell asleep. But even if she was asleep, she still sobbed from time to time, as if she had suffered grievances in her sleep. Li Shang put her on the bed and covered her with a quilt, then looked at Lu Yi. What do we do now? How could Lu Yi know what to do? He had never been a father before. Originally, he planned to wait for the little girl to wake up and let her come and go freely, but who would have thought that she would recognize him as her father and mother? See if there is anything wrong with her body. Lu Yi stood in the distance and pointed to Li Shang, fearing that the little girl would suddenly wake up and recognize him as her father. Li Shang saw through his thoughts and couldn't help rolling her eyes, carefully examining the little girl's body. A moment later, Li Shang frowned. Strange. What's wrong? Lu Yi asked. She really doesn't seem to have cultivated. Li Shang's face was puzzled. When the little girl was unconscious, Li Shang checked her more than once, but at that time she only thought that the little girl had suffered a serious injury that caused her body to be a little abnormal, but now that she had woken up, she still couldn't see any trace of cultivation. She was like a real mortal. End of chapter. Chapter 1545. Both Lu Yi and Li Shang knew that this little girl couldn't be immortal because she had her own spirit sea and could traverse the starry sky with her physical body. At the very least, she should be a star constellation cultivator. Moreover, to be able to preserve her soul avatar under the corrosion of the soul-devouring aphids, her cultivation was most likely higher than a star constellation cultivator. However, her physical body showed no signs of cultivation, which was very strange. Lu Yi personally went forward to check and found that it was as Li Shang said. For a time, the two people in the room stared at each other blankly. The little girl's physical condition was secondary. For some reason, she recognized them as her parents, which was troublesome. After thinking for a moment, Lu Yi said, "I'll leave this girl to you. I don't know how to take care of children." "I don't know either." Li Shang looked at him. Lu Yi persuaded, "Just take care of her casually. She's not an ordinary child, maybe she's even older than all of us combined. It's just that she's a little delirious right now and has the temperament of a child." Li Shang glanced at him with a bitter expression. Lu Yi suddenly picked up the note and said, "I'm going out to pay a visit to this world's Yu Yao." Saying so, he quickly slipped away. Du Lang sent a message to inform him that his honored master had agreed to meet with him and asked if Lu Yi was free. If he was, he would take him there now. When Lu Yi rushed to the appointed location, Du Lang was already waiting for him. The two immediately flew in the same direction. On the way, Lu Yi asked Du Lang about Yu Yao's honored master and learned that his name was Hua Cheng. A moment later, they arrived in front of a large hall. Without needing to report, Du Lang directly led Lu Yi into the hall. Inside the spacious hall, there was only one figure sitting cross-legged, his aura deep and profound. Lu Yi looked up and saw that Hua Cheng looked very old, his hair and beard all white, and even his face was full of wrinkles. Lu Yi knew that this old man was probably like Tang Jun, nearing the end of his lifespan, and his condition was more serious than Tang Jun's. Tang Jun had bought a longevity fruit before, which increased his lifespan by a lot. Perhaps he could live for a few hundred years, but this old man didn't seem to have much longer to live. Du Lang led Lu Yi forward and respectfully said, "Honored master, Brother Lu Yi is here." Lu Yi also bowed respectfully. Lu Yi of the Nine Heavens greets Senior Hua. Hua Cheng had a gentle smile on his face. He looked Lu Yi up and down and found that it was indeed as Du Lang had said before. This young man who had once shone brilliantly at the reincarnation tree was actually already at the late-stage constellation realm. Although he didn't show it on the surface, his heart was in turmoil. This kind of cultivation speed was simply unheard of. From the looks of it, not only did the other party have the support of a supreme powerhouse, his own aptitude must also be top-notch. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to grow so much in such a short period of time. Judging from Du Lang's previous reports, Lu Ye's cultivation wasn't just for show. He also had a powerful strength that matched his cultivation. You don't have to be so polite, little friend. Sit down and talk. Hua Qing gestured with a friendly smile. Lu Yi readily accepted his advice and sat on the praying mat at the side. My disciple is untalented, but this old man is extremely grateful for your help, Hua Qing said slowly. Lu Yi hurriedly said, Senior, you're too serious. Brother Du Lang and I are old acquaintances, and it's only natural for me to help as much as I can. Moreover, Brother Du Lang also gave me some good things back in the Alpha origin stage. Hua Qing clearly knew about what had happened back then. He stroked his beard and smiled. It's just some jade ants, how can they be compared to your life-saving grace? He turned his head to look at Du Lang. You can't forget the life-saving grace. It's rare that little friend Lu doesn't mind you being weak. You should get closer to him in the future. Du Lang hurriedly nodded. The following conversation didn't have much practical content. Hua Qing originally thought that Lu Yi had only come to visit because of etiquette, so he naturally talked about whatever topic he wanted to talk about. Unexpectedly, after chatting for a while, Lu Yi suddenly said, Senior, this junior has come to ask for a favor. Hua Qing smiled. Little friend, feel free to speak your mind. If this old man has the ability to help, I will not refuse. Disregarding the fact that Lu Yi had saved his disciple's life, Hua Qing didn't mind building a good relationship with the supreme expert behind Lu Yi. Lu Yi pondered for a moment and didn't mention anything. Instead, he asked, Has Senior heard of the Wanxiang Galaxy? Hua Qing was taken aback. He then nodded and said, This old man has also traveled the starry sky when I was young, so I've naturally heard of the Wanxiang Galaxy. It's said to be the central galaxy of the starry sky. Du Lang obviously didn't know about the Wanxiang Galaxy. He curiously asked, Central Galaxy? Master, is the Wanxiang Galaxy located at the center of the starry sky? Hua Qing smiled. The central galaxy doesn't refer to its geographical location. I don't know if the Wanxiang Galaxy is the center of the starry sky, but it's called the Central Galaxy because it has many insect tunnels that connect to other galaxies. Cultivators from thousands of galaxies can enter the Wanxiang Galaxy through these insect tunnels. The prosperity of the galaxy is unimaginable, but it's a pity that this old man didn't have the chance to see it. Du Lang was speechless. A galaxy with insect tunnels connecting thousands of galaxies? This scene was hard to imagine. Hua Qing explained to his disciple and then looked at Lu Yi. He asked curiously, My disciple said that little friend is from the Jade Conch Galaxy. Is that not true? Lu Yi said, This junior is indeed from the Jade Conch Galaxy, but this junior came here from the Wanxiang Galaxy. Hua Qing looked surprised. You're from the Myriad Phenomenon Galaxy? Lu Yi nodded. Yes. Hua Qing seemed to have realized something and was a little excited. How much time did you spend on your journey? It definitely wouldn't be too long because he had seen Lu Yi at the reincarnation tree a few years ago. A whole year. Hua Qing was shocked. He exclaimed, A year? On the side, Du Lang also showed an incredulous expression. Although a year was not a short time, if they were sailing in the starry sky, then this time was nothing. It should be known that it took them half a year to rush back from the desolate star region. Didn't this mean that before meeting Lu Yi had only been traveling through the starry sky for half a year? Was the Wanxiang Galaxy so close to a Pyrrhon? After recovering from his shock, Hua Qing suddenly shook his head. That's impossible. When this old man was young, he once inquired about the Wanxiang Galaxy's location. It's extremely far away from a Pyrrhon. It's impossible to get there in a year. As he spoke, he seemed to realize something. Unless there's a new stable insect path. Lu Yi said, This junior did use the insect path, but it's not a new one. It's an existing one. Then where is the insect path? Hua Qing was excited. As an old man who had lived for thousands of years, his mind was as calm as an ancient well, but he still couldn't suppress his emotions at this moment. If they could really rush to the Wanxiang Galaxy in a short time, it would be a good way out for the entire Scarlet Sky continent. It's in the desolate star field. Lu Yi replied. Hua Cheng thought to himself that this was indeed the case. Du Lang had met Lu Yi in the desolate star field, and Lu Yi had only taken a short time to come from the Wanxiang galaxy. If there really was an insect path, it would only exist in the desolate star field. However, in the desolate star field, where the constellations of the Four Directions galaxy often entered, no one had ever found the insect path. This was strange. Little friend, can you tell this old man the specific location of the insect path? Hua Cheng looked at Lu Yi with a sincere expression. Lu Yi came to see him and took the initiative to mention the Wanxiang galaxy and the insect path. Looking at Hua Cheng, Lu Yi probably wouldn't refuse to tell him more. Lu Yi indeed didn't intend to hide it, because these things couldn't be hidden. Moreover, he had a favor to ask of the indefinite star field. Whether it was going to the Long Cloud Galaxy or the Wanxiang Galaxy, the indefinite star field would also need his help. Therefore, it was best for both sides to cooperate with sincerity. Only then would it be a win-win situation. Other things aside, when the fleet entered the Long Cloud Galaxy in the future, Lu Yi would first have to greet the powerhouses of the Long Cloud Galaxy. Otherwise, with so many cultivators suddenly breaking into other galaxies, it might be seen as an invasion. It wouldn't be good if there was a misunderstanding and a fight. The Long Cloud Galaxy wasn't weak. Lu Yi was about to speak, but Hua Cheng raised his hand and stopped him. He frowned and pondered for a moment. Little friend, you don't have to tell this old man first. Lu Yi looked at him in confusion. It was clearly Hua Cheng who asked first, but now he said there was no need to tell him. Lu Yi didn't know what he was thinking. As if sensing his thoughts, Hua Cheng smiled bitterly. Little friend, you should know the current situation of Red Sky. It can be said that Red Sky is now attached to the indefinite realm. If this old man knows the passage to the Wanxiang Galaxy, it won't be good for me to hide it. I have to go to the indefinite realm and report it to Rizhao, so it's better not to know. After a pause, Hua Cheng continued, Little friend, this old man has a favor to ask of you. Lu Yi nodded. Senior, please speak. Little friend, if you return to the Wanxiang Galaxy one day, can you help this old man bring some people over? There won't be more than 10 people, and all of them are star mansions. Lu Yi said, Senior, I do want to return to the Wanxiang Galaxy, but I want to go back to my homeland first. I came out of the Wanxiang Galaxy and just happened to pass by this place. Hua Cheng looked pensive. Little friend, you want to go back to your homeland and bring a group of people to the Wanxiang Galaxy? Lu Yi nodded. So if Senior wants me to bring some people over, there's no problem, but you'll have to wait for a while. There's no hurry. Little friend, when you return, you can just bring along the Red Sky Mansions. Hua Cheng said, finally realizing Lu Ye's real purpose. Little friend, you want to see Rizhao of the indefinite realm, don't you? Previously, he just wanted to find a way out for the juniors of his domain, but now he realized Lu Ye's true intentions. Because if Lu Yi really wanted to bring people out of his homeland and pass by the indefinite realm, he would first have to get permission from the indefinite realm. He seemed to have recovered and had been running a fever for the past 2 days. His whole body was weak and his eyes were burning with pain. Second baby also had a fever. End of chapter. Chapter 1546. However, Lu Ye was just a constellation. How could she be qualified to meet Sunshine? That was why she came to see him, hoping that he would introduce her. Hua Cheng thought to himself and roughly understood Lu Ye's intentions. He thought about it carefully. Compared to finding a way out for the constellations in his own domain, Lu Ye's prospects would be better if she could cooperate with Apeiron. Yes, I would like to meet Sunshine of Apeiron. I wonder if you could introduce me to her? Hua Cheng thought about it and nodded. That's not a problem. I believe that Apeiron would be very interested in this too. Little friend, you should go back and prepare. Tomorrow we will go to Apeiron together. Thank you, Senior. After a while, Lu Yi and Du Lang left the main hall together. Du Lang was obviously very interested in the Wanxiang Galaxy. He asked a lot of questions about the Wanxiang Galaxy. Lu Yi casually mentioned some things that made Du Lang fascinated. However, if he didn't see it with his own eyes, it would be hard to imagine how vast the Wanxiang Sea was. During this period, each spiritual island was prosperous, and there were countless cultivators. Dou Lang only left reluctantly after sending Lu Yi back. When he returned to his residence, the little girl was still asleep. Li Shang sat quietly by her side and looked after her. Lu Yi sorted out his thoughts. It would not be easy to bring someone from Jade Conch to the Wanxiang Sea. Apeiron was only the first obstacle. When he returned to the 9 states, he would have to deal with the Jade Conch domain. No matter what, the Jade Conch domain did not have Yu Yao, and the 9 states could not rely on her for the time being. There was only Wu Zhua in the Qingli Dao world, so he definitely could not leave. Therefore, he could only rely on the Jade Conch domain. Even if he dealt with the Jade Conch domain, he would have to negotiate with Chang Yun on the way back. The road to happiness is strewn with setbacks. Shall we give her a name? Li Shang suddenly said. Lu Ye's thoughts were interrupted and he looked up at her. Li Shang said, "This little girl is not in her right mind. I'm afraid she doesn't even know her name. She needs a name." "What do you want to name her?" Lu Ye asked. Li Shang thought for a while. "Let's call her Yaya." Lu Ye's eyes twitched. He realized that this woman was really strange. Even though she was a soul, she still treated her like a child even though she clearly knew that she wasn't really a child. After taking care of her for half a year, she had probably developed feelings for her. "As long as you like it." Lu Yi had no objections. Yaya slept for a while and finally woke up. When she saw Li Shang, she happily threw herself at him and hugged him tightly. After a while, she ran back and sat in Lu Ye's arms with a leisurely look. She kept calling out to her father and mother. Lu Yi was tormented to the point that he didn't even have the time to go to the Green Hall to temper his cultivation. He could only deduce spirit runes. The next day, Li Shang disappeared into Lu Ye's deity sea. Lu Yi pushed open the door, preparing to meet up with Hua Cheng and rush to Apeiron. After taking a few steps, he turned back to look at Yaya. "Come with me." After this trip to Apeiron, he probably wouldn't return to Crimson Sky, so he had to bring Yaya along. Yaya didn't move. She only raised her lotus-like arms and shouted crisply, "Daddy, hug." The corner of Lu Ye's eyes twitched, and he looked at her silently. Yaya just maintained that posture. As if she could see Lu Ye's resistance, her small mouth pouted, and her big eyes were covered with tears. Lu Yi was secretly alert. This was not a child, this was not a child. She just looked like a child. Don't be fooled by her pitiful and cute appearance. After a while, before Yaya cried out, Lu Yi quickly stepped forward and picked her up. He was a little tired. He didn't know what sin he had committed. He just randomly saved someone, and he actually saved a daughter. Yaya, on the other hand, was overjoyed. At first, she was calm and steady, but after a while, she began to squirm in Lu Ye's arms. From time to time, she would pinch his face or nose. She would also flip around on his body like a little monkey. Sometimes she would ride on his shoulders, and sometimes she would sit on his arms. Lu Yi was tormented to the point that he didn't have any temper. After a while, Lu Yi arrived at the agreed place. Hua Cheng was already waiting there. He was alone, as Dou Lang wouldn't be following him on this trip. Seeing a little girl on Lu Ye's shoulder, Hua Cheng was a little surprised. "Little friend, this little girl is..." Before Lu Yi could speak, Yaya spoke first. "He is my daddy, the best daddy in the world." Lu Yi chuckled, not knowing how to explain. If he dared to say no, Yaya would dare to cry in front of him. Hua Cheng smiled kindly and looked Yaya up and down. He praised, "Little friend, you are amazing. Even a child is so lovable." As he said this, he flipped his hand, and a treasure that looked like a hairband appeared in his palm. "Since it's our first time meeting, how about I give you a little gift?" Yaya glanced at the hairband in Hua Cheng's hand, and then showed a disdainful expression. She looked away and said softly, "Trash." Hua Cheng's expression suddenly froze. Although it was a gift for a child, he, Yu Yao, would not be shabby. This hairband was a spirit artifact after all. How could it be trash? Moreover, it was criticized by a child in front of him. Lu Yi was also a little embarrassed. When Yaya was with him and Li Shang, she looked extremely innocent, like an ignorant child. Who would have thought that she would say such shocking words at this moment? He hurriedly grabbed Yaya off his shoulder, grabbed her collar with one hand, and slapped her but with the other. "What nonsense are you talking about? Hurry up and apologize to Grandpa." Yaya covered her back with her hands, and was carried by Lu Yi with one hand. She looked very pitiful. She looked at Hua Cheng with a wronged expression. "Grandpa, I was wrong." Lu Yi was also embarrassed. "Senior, please forgive me. There are some problems with this child. I didn't teach her well." It was not good to explain too much. Hua Cheng saw that she was interesting and laughed. "It's okay. She is a child, and sometimes her words are shocking. Children's words carry no harm. Children's words carry no harm." However, he did not say anything about giving a gift. He put away the hairband and summoned a star boat. After Lu Yi and Yaya stood on it, the star boat soared into the sky and into the clouds. It would take Lu Yi about half a month to get to Indefinite from the Red Sky realm. However, Hua Cheng's speed was obviously faster. It should take less than 10 days. Yaya could not stay idle during the journey. She ran around on the star boat looking at this and that. Occasionally, she would see something beautiful in the starry sky and would ask Lu Yi to share it with her. Lu Yi felt a headache coming. He lamented that children were really difficult to raise. After a long time, Yaya was tired. She ran to Lu Ye's side and sat in his arms. She found a comfortable position and fell asleep. One day later, Lu Yi, who was refining spiritual jades and cultivating, clearly felt that the star boat had slowed down. He looked up and saw a stream of light approaching at high speed. Hua Cheng said, "It's Indefinite star boat. It seems that she is going to the Red Sky realm. But I don't know why. Young friend, please wait for a moment." Lu Yi nodded slightly. After a short while, the star boat arrived in front of them. Hua Cheng looked over and recognized one of the people on it. He cupped his fists and said, "So it's fellow Taoist Kong. Are you going to the Red Sky realm?" A middle-aged man with a dignified expression on the star boat looked over. This man was the fellow Taoist Kong that Hua Cheng had mentioned. He was also a late-stage Yuyao cultivator. However, unlike Hua Cheng, who was old and weak, Kong Cheng was in the prime of his life. Even in the Indefinite realm, his status was not low. He was a powerhouse with a high chance of reaching the Sunshine realm. Kong Cheng clasped his hands behind his back and said calmly, "I'm going to the Red Sky realm." Hua Cheng was surprised. What is fellow Taoist Kang's business? Under normal circumstances, Indefinite's Yuyao would not go to a place like the Red Sky realm. Therefore, Hua Cheng did not know what Kong Cheng was going to do. Since they happened to meet on the way, he naturally wanted to ask about it. While the two were talking, Li also looked over. However, his gaze did not fall on Kong Cheng. It was on a young man beside Kong Cheng. It was Su Dingyang. Lu Yi had a vague feeling that Su Dingyang was coming for him. He had injured Su Dingyang and the others in the Barren Star Field, so he could not kill them all. It seemed like Li Shang was right. Trouble was coming. However, Li did not expect Su Dingyang to be so impatient. He should have just returned to the Indefinite realm not long ago, but he had already brought a late-stage Yuyao cultivator to the Indefinite realm. When their eyes met, a cold glint flashed in Su Dingyang's eyes. On the star boat, Kong Cheng looked at Lu Yi and said calmly, "It's nothing important. I just heard that cultivators from other galaxies have invaded our galaxy. I was worried, so I came to take a look." Hua Cheng was surprised. "Invaded? Why do you say that?" Lu Yi was indeed a cultivator from another galaxy, but he was just passing by. He was far from invading. Hua Cheng knew a little about Kong Cheng's temperament. He was a very proud person. Even if Lu Yi had some conflicts with Su Dingyang, it was not enough for him to make such a big fuss. After all, it was not appropriate for the elders to interfere in the affairs of the younger generation. Therefore, Hua Cheng did not understand what Kong Cheng was trying to do. He could not possibly stand up for Su Dingyang, could he? In fact, Kong Cheng had come personally because of Lu Yi, but not because of Su Dingyang as Hua Cheng thought. He had the same philosophy as Hua Cheng. The younger generation should solve their own problems. If the elders interfered, the younger generation would appear incompetent. However, he had heard about Lu Yi from Su Dingyang and realized that Lu Yi was a talent. Therefore, he had some ideas. Although this generation of the indefinite realm was not bad, there were no outstanding talents. On the Grand Luo side, there was Shensi Luo, who suppressed all the other galaxies. Su Dingyang was not bad, but he was still overshadowed by Shensi Luo. If he could recruit Lu Yi and make him work for the indefinite realm, he might be able to change the situation. Kong Cheng was confident that he could recruit a wandering galaxy from an unknown galaxy. As for the invasion, it was just an excuse to make it easier for him to act personally and show the indefinite realm's power. End of chapter. Chapter 1547. If this foreign cultivator was truly extraordinary, Kong Cheng wouldn't even mind arranging a marriage for him. After all, he had to keep this person no matter what. If it weren't for this, why would he, a late Moon Jade Realm cultivator, come to Red Sky Realm in person? He only brought Su Dingyang along so that he could identify the person. Su Dingyang had no idea what Kong Cheng was thinking. He only thought that Kong Cheng had come to stand up for him. He was rather surprised, wondering why this senior of his had changed his mind. "Fellow Taoist Kong, I'm afraid you've misunderstood," Hua Cheng hurriedly explained. "This young friend Lu Ye is indeed from the Jade Conch Galaxy. However, he's just passing by. Moreover, he's an old acquaintance of my disciple, Du Lang. That's why he stopped by Red Sky Realm. Whether it's a misunderstanding or not, I have my own considerations." Kong Cheng looked at Lu Yi indifferently. "I was going to Red Sky Realm, but since we've met here, it'll save me some trouble. Sect Master Hua, I'll be taking this kid with me." With that, he reached out and grabbed Lu Yi. Hua Cheng was shocked. He couldn't understand how things had developed to this point. He hurriedly shouted, "You can't." Although he had originally planned to bring Lu Yi to the unbounded realm, being taken away by Kong Cheng like this was a completely different matter from him personally sending Lu Yi over. With that said, he waved his sleeve and raised his palm to meet Lu Ye's attack. As their dermic powers collided, a meteorite the size of a house nearby shattered. Hua Cheng's starboat swayed for a while before it finally stabilized itself. Kong Cheng, on the other hand, didn't move at all. Even though they were both late Moon Jade Realm cultivators, there was clearly a huge gap between their strength. His face darkened as he stared at Hua Cheng. "Are you going to stop me?" He was just worried that he wouldn't have a chance to show Indefinite's power, but Hua Cheng had taken the initiative to do so. This was exactly what he wanted. Therefore, he didn't hold back anymore. He flew out of the starboat and charged towards Hua Cheng's starboat. Moreover, he had used some kind of mysterious secret technique. As he approached, his figure grew larger and larger. In the blink of an eye, he was as large as a star, covering a large part of the starry sky. Then he shouted sternly, "Sect Master Hua, I'll be taking him with me. You're on your own." With these words, the giant hand slowly reached out and enveloped the star boat with an invisible force. Hua Cheng was so anxious that his forehead was covered in sweat. Putting aside the fact that he was no match for Kong Cheng right now, even if he was, it wouldn't be good for him to fight too fiercely with Kong Cheng in his current situation. He could only shout, "Fellow Taoist Kong, this old man was going to bring little friend Lu to Indefinite to see the Realm Lord. This matter is of great importance. I hope fellow Taoist Kong can show mercy. If what Lu Yi mentioned before could be achieved, it would be a good thing for the entire Indefinite star system. At that time, it wouldn't just solve the problem of the Red Sky cultivators, but also the entire Indefinite star system." Hua Cheng believed that Indefinite Realm Lord would be very interested in Lu Ye's proposal. Therefore, even if Lu Yi was just a constellation, the unbounded realm would not treat her lightly and would most likely treat her as an honored guest. However, Kong Cheng had suddenly made a move. If he messed things up, Hua Cheng wouldn't know how to clean up the mess. Kong Cheng, however, ignored him completely and continued to press down on the starboat. Even though Hua Cheng was struggling to hold on, Lu Yi felt a great deal of pressure. He stared at the palm pressing down on him from above and sighed softly, secretly connecting to the red talisman in his body. Hua Cheng was definitely no match for Kong Cheng. Lu Yi didn't want to use the red talisman to deal with Kong Cheng. If he really killed Kong Cheng here, there would really be no way to clean up the mess. He only wanted to use the red talisman to intimidate Kong Cheng. It would be best if he could make Kong Cheng retreat. However, before Lu Yi could activate the red talisman, Ya, who was sleeping in his arms, suddenly rubbed her eyes and muttered, "So noisy." She opened her eyes, her expression clearly unhappy. She stared at the giant palm blocking her view of the starry sky, and her chubby cheeks suddenly puffed up. She then jumped out of Lu Ye's arms. Before Lu Yi could react, Ye had already rushed out of the starboat, her small figure rushing forward. Lu Yi instinctively raised his hand to grab her, but he failed to catch her. He couldn't help but be stunned. He looked up and saw Ye's small pink fist suddenly swinging forward. A jade bracelet she had been wearing on her wrist seemed to flash with a faint light. Then, Ye's voice rang out, "You're disturbing my sleep." That small fist didn't seem to contain any power, but under it, the giant palm that blocked out the starry sky shattered with a loud bang. Then, a miserable scream rang out, and a figure was sent flying backwards, covered in blood. Lu Yi saw clearly that the person who was sent flying backwards was Kong Cheng, who had been insufferably arrogant just a moment ago. One of his arms was completely smashed, and blood spilled out into the sky. He didn't stop at all. He grabbed Su Dingyang, who was still on the starboat, and then turned into a streak of light and shot back in the direction he came from. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared. Outside Hua Cheng's starboat, Ye didn't chase after him. She yawned, turned around, and fell into Lu Ye's arms again. She snuggled, found a comfortable position, and fell asleep with a satisfied look on her face. Hua Cheng maintained his posture of resisting Kong Cheng with his hands raised high like a stone statue. He stared blankly at the little girl in Lu Ye's arms, his forehead covered in cold sweat. Lu Yi was also stiff all over. He maintained his sitting posture and didn't dare to move. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. After a long time, Hua Cheng swallowed his saliva, slowly stood still, and then carefully sat down again. Staring at the little girl in Lu Ye's arms, he didn't dare to breathe too loudly, for fear of disturbing Ye's sleep. "Young friend, is this your daughter?" Hua Cheng asked quietly through voice transmission. Even though he had lived for thousands of years, he had never seen such an incredible thing. How could a constellation give birth to a Rizhao? It was completely impossible. But Ye had called him daddy intimately just now. Lu Yi didn't know how to explain, so he could only say, "I picked her up." "Where did you pick her up?" Hua Cheng blurted out. Looking at his posture, it seemed that he also wanted to pick one up. Lu Yi didn't speak again, just looking down at Ye. He had realized before that Ye was not an ordinary little girl, and guessed that her cultivation might not be as simple as a constellation, but he really didn't expect her to be a Rizhao. The moment she punched, the unique aura that belonged to Rizhao was very obvious. Although it was fleeting, Lu Yi still felt it clearly. But the strange thing was that neither he nor Li Shang found any trace of cultivation on Ye. He was secretly a little scared. He had spanked her before. Fortunately, Ye didn't flip out at that time, otherwise 100 of him wouldn't be enough to take her punch. It seemed that he had to treat Ye better in the future. Lu Yi secretly made up his mind. "Young friend, what should we do now?" Hua Cheng asked. Originally, they were going to the indefinite realm to discuss cooperation with Rizhao, but Kong Cheng was injured before they even reached indefinite. If they went to indefinite again, who knew what they would face? Lu Yi also felt that this was a little difficult. After thinking for a moment, he said, "Senior Hua, if you were Rizhao, would you be interested in the Wanxiang Galaxy?" Hua Cheng said, "If there's a route to enter the Wanxiang Galaxy within a year, this old man would naturally be very interested. The Wanxiang Galaxy is famous. Who wouldn't want to join it?" He understood Lu Ye's thoughts and continued, "Yu Yao's actions cannot represent all of indefinite. Young friend, you have no grudges with indefinite, and Yu Yao was only injured, not killed. If there are enough benefits, this matter will most likely not be pursued." Lu Yi nodded. The route to enter the Wanxiang Galaxy is enough benefits. Hua Cheng said, "This old man was originally a little worried that young friend's strength was not high enough to negotiate with indefinite on an equal footing. If indefinite forced you to hand over the route, she could completely abandon you and even force you to lead the way. Now, it seems that young friend already has the qualifications. As he spoke, he glanced at Ye. With Rizhao by his side, Lu Yi did indeed have the qualifications to speak with indefinite on an equal footing. It was normal for Hua Qing to have such worries because he didn't know the difficulties they would have to face in order to reach the Wanxiang galaxy. Setting aside the mist dragon, Lu Yi needed to hold a torch made from the reincarnation tree's trunk to lead the way. Even passing through the mist dragon and entering the insect path to reach the long cloud galaxy would require someone to negotiate and allow a large number of cultivators to pass through. Even if everything went smoothly, it would be very difficult to gain a foothold in the Wanxiang galaxy without a foundation. Indefinite was not weak, but there were many galaxies like Indefinite in the Wanxiang galaxy. Few of these galaxies had their own spiritual islands. If there was no one to help them, their days in the Wanxiang galaxy would be difficult. That was why Lu Yi had never been worried that Indefinite's experts would use force against him. After all, if this matter was settled, Indefinite would need his help in many ways. As long as he could meet Indefinite Rizhao, Lu Yi was confident that he could convince him. Now that he had Ye, he was even more confident. Then let's continue forward, Lu Yi said. Indefinite couldn't avoid the route given by the reincarnation tree, so this matter had to be resolved. Hua Qing nodded and steered the planetary boat forward. Ye had been sleeping all along the way. Lu Yi wasn't sure if it was because of the punch she had unleashed earlier, or if it was for some other reason. He found an opportunity to tell Li Shang, who was hiding in his divine sense ocean, about Ye's previous performance. Li Shang was obviously shocked when he heard it. However, both of them felt that no matter how powerful Ye was, her temperament was still that of a child's. This definitely had something to do with her mind being destroyed. They just didn't know if she would fly into a rage one day when she recovered her mind and remembered that she had called the two constellations Father and Mother. This scene was chilling just thinking about it. A few days later, a realm appeared in front of them. They had arrived at the Indefinite Realm. Looking from afar, the Indefinite Realm was obviously much larger than the Red Sky Realm, and its foundation was deeper. A realm that could give birth to Rizhao was undoubtedly a top-notch large-scale realm. It wasn't that the realm had given birth to Rizhao, but that Rizhao's birth had raised the realm's height. However, a large-scale realm was still a large-scale realm. If it wasn't at the level of a top-notch realm, it wouldn't be able to give birth to spiritual jade veins. End of chapter. Chapter 1548. Before the starboat even got close to Apeiron, Lu Yi noticed that someone was secretly spying on them from afar. Kong Cheng must have told Apeiron about what had happened to him after he fled back to Apeiron. Hua Cheng grumbled inwardly when he saw that the person spying on them was a Yu Yao cultivator. He could only pray that everything would go smoothly from here on out. If things didn't go well, and they fell out with each other, regardless of what would happen to Lu Yi and the others, Qi Kong wouldn't have an easy time in the future. Qi Kong's situation wasn't good to begin with. He could only rely on Apeiron to survive. If he was accused of colluding with the enemy, there would be no way out for him. They continued forward until they were close to the unbounded dimension, and a row of figures blocked their path. Surprisingly, the one in the lead was Kong Cheng. Kong Cheng's face was somewhat pale, obviously due to the injuries he'd sustained a few days ago. However, he'd already regrown his broken arm. This wasn't a difficult task for a Yu Yao. All they needed to do was pay a certain price. Apart from Kong Cheng, there were 5 other Yu Yao. There were both men and women, and all of them had powerful auras. Clearly, they weren't all of Apeiron's Yu Yao. Along the way, Lu Yi and Hua Qing had inquired about Apeiron's background and learned that there were 3 Rizhao in total. However, 2 of them were always traveling outside and rarely showed themselves. Thus, there was only 1 Rizhao in the Apeiron realm. He was also the realm master of Apeiron, and his name was Jiang Shang. Hua Qing steered the starboat to a stop about 5 kilometers away from the Yu Yao. This distance was within reach for the Yu Yao. Hua Qing was secretly nervous as he looked at the other party. He didn't know what Apeiron's attitude was. He exchanged a glance with Lu Yi and walked out of the starboat. Ye had already woken up. She was sitting on Lu Ye's neck, grabbing his hair with both hands. She had a leisurely expression on her face, and her two short legs were swinging in front of Lu Ye's chest. Numerous pairs of eyes instantly gathered on the seemingly inconspicuous Ye. Clearly, they all knew about Ye's Rizhao. Led by Kong Cheng, the 6 Yu Yao bowed in unison. "Honored guest, your arrival brings light to my humble realm. We respectfully welcome your arrival." Seeing this, Lu Yi raised his eyebrows, knowing that the situation was not developing in a bad direction. Even though one of Kong Cheng's arms had been crippled by Yaya, he was still the one who had offended her first. If Yaya had been willing to take his life back then, he would not have been able to survive. Losing only one arm was already a great gain for him. In the starry skies, the consequences of offending a Rizhao were very serious. Kong Cheng was only at the late Moon Jade realm, so he could still be considered reasonable. How could he dare to care about such things? Taking 10,000 steps back, even if he holds a grudge in his heart, if he asks Rizhao of this world to take action, who knows who is stronger and who is weaker? Moreover, once the Rizhao people started fighting, it would not be easy to clean up the mess. No one wanted to see the Rizhao people fighting each other in this galaxy. After considering all kinds of things, Kong Cheng could only pretend that nothing had happened. As for whether the childlike Sunshine elite would take it to heart, Kong Cheng had no idea. That was why Hua Cheng had been on tenterhooks for the past few days. He didn't know what Apeiron's attitude would be, but Kong Cheng was even more nervous. Now that Apeiron had made her stance clear, it was time for Lu Yi to make his stance clear. Lu Yi understood tacitly and cupped his fists. Lu Ye of the 9 heavens greets fellow Taoists. In terms of age and cultivation, it was not a problem for him to address them as senior, but he was ultimately acting on behalf of Jade Conch. Even if his cultivation was not high, since Ye was above him, he could not show any weakness. The several Moon Jade realm cultivators were taken aback when they heard this, and one of them frowned. "Lu Ye of the 9 heavens? Are you the Lu Ye who participated in the battle for the reincarnation tree and the divine sea a few years ago?" Many people from Qi Kong's side had participated in the battle of the divine sea back then, and Apeiron had naturally participated as well. She was the one leading the team, but the divine sea expert she brought with her didn't survive and died in the Alpha Origin stage not long after the battle of the divine sea began. She was not in a hurry to leave and waited until the Alpha Origin realm closed before leaving. So, while others might not know of Lu Ye of the 9 heavens, she had heard of him. After returning, she told the Moon Jade realm cultivators about him, and they were all amazed. After all, an 8th order divine sea cultivator was able to emerge victorious in such a battle. It was truly extraordinary. Indeed. Lu Yi responded in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. The woman looked him up and down, secretly shocked by the speed at which Lu Ye's cultivation had risen, but also somewhat relieved. "No wonder you were able to suppress Luo Shensi." As she spoke, her divine sense also surged, apparently secretly transmitting a message to the Moon Jade realm cultivators around her. What had shocked her during the battle for the divine sea back then was not only the performance of Lu Ye of the 9 heavens, but also the master who had brought Lu Ye here. Others might only realize that Yang Qing was extraordinary and powerful, but because of her bloodline, this woman could faintly feel just how terrifying Yang Qing was. At this moment, the expressions of the Moon Jade realm cultivators around her became even more solemn. Kong Cheng's intestines turned green with regret. After hearing about Su Ding Yang's experience that day, he had taken it for granted that Lu Ye was a good talent and wanted to recruit him to the unbounded realm to train him so that he could compete with Luo Shensi. Who would have thought that Lu Ye would have such a terrifying background? If he had known earlier, Kong Cheng would never have dared to act in such a manner. From the looks of it, there were at least 2 Rizhao standing behind Lu Ye of the 9 heavens. One was the one who had brought him to the reincarnation tree, and the other was the little girl riding on his shoulder. This was what they knew. Who knew if there were more? The realm of the 9 heavens must be an extremely powerful top realm. How could the unbounded realm covet such a person? If they really forced him to stay, they might get into trouble. Because of Yaya's existence, the unbounded realm cultivators did not dare to act rashly. Now, after the woman's transmission, the Moon Jade Realm cultivators took this matter more seriously. Lu Yi said, "I have taken the liberty to visit this time because I have something important to discuss with your realm. I wonder if it would be convenient for you?" Kong Cheng no longer had the cold and aloof look from before. A smile bloomed on his face. "Since you have something important to discuss, please come in for a chat." A few days ago, Hua Cheng had told him that he would bring Lu Yi to the unbounded realm to discuss something important. At that time, Kong Cheng did not pay much attention to it, but now it seemed that Hua Cheng was not lying to him. "Thank you for your hospitality." Lu Yi nodded and stepped forward, Hua Cheng following closely beside him. As they moved forward, Lu Yi stood in the middle, while the Moon Jade Realm cultivators stood on either side. Kong Cheng and Lu Yi chatted idly, occasionally introducing him to the enchanting scenery of this realm. They could also tell that although the little girl riding on Lu Ye's neck was a sunshine cultivator, Lu Yi seemed to be in charge of this trip. Moreover, the little girl gave off a very strange feeling, more like an ignorant child than a sunshine cultivator. Only Kong Cheng knew that under this cute and innocent appearance was a true sunshine cultivator. After entering the realm, they arrived at the unbounded palace. The place was misty, and rare beasts and birds ran freely in the mountains. Amidst the lingering clouds, pavilions and pavilions were faintly discernible. There were many rugged rocks in the mountains, and there was also a silver waterfall that hung 3,000 feet high. It was a spectacular sight. On the tallest and largest mountain peak, a magnificent hall stood. Kong Cheng and the others led Lu Yi to this place. Lu Yi immediately felt that there was an endless pressure slowly filling the hall. Sunshine. Lu Yi understood that there was a sunshine cultivator in this hall. It was probably the realm lord of this realm, Jiang Shang. It was not difficult to understand. Since Lu Yi brought sunshine here, the sunshine cultivator of this realm naturally had to express himself. Although the endless pressure was strong, it did not have much of an impact on him. Obviously, it had no intention of making things difficult for him. The pressure was directed at Yaya, who was riding on Lu Ye's neck. A cultivator at the level of sunshine would naturally not make things difficult for a constellation for no reason. Only a cultivator of the sunshine level would arouse their interest. Yaya was originally looking left and right on Lu Ye's head with a leisurely expression, but when she arrived here, her cheeks puffed up, and then she jumped off Lu Ye's head like a monkey, running directly into the hall. Lu Yi was shocked and hurriedly shouted, "Yaya!" But Yaya had already disappeared. Lu Yi hurriedly chased after her. Kong Cheng and the others could not care too much and could only follow. When Lu Yi entered the hall, he looked up and saw Yaya's figure. At this moment, she was standing at the very front of the hall. There was a table there, and behind the table, a middle-aged man who looked like a scholar with a feather fan was sitting upright. The endless pressure that Lu Yi felt was coming from this person. This was the realm lord of the unbounded realm, Jiang Shang. Jiang Shang had a feather fan in his hand. It looked like he was gently fanning himself, but at this moment he was frozen for some reason. He stared intently at Yaya, who was standing opposite his table, with a serious expression. Yaya did not even look at him. She just stared at Jiang Shang's table. There were 3 fruit plates on the table. One plate was filled with grape-like berries, but they were like crystals. Another plate was filled with 2 or 3 pear-like spirit fruits, and the last plate was filled with some small red fruits. "Do you want to eat?" Yaya suddenly looked up at Jiang Shang, her eyes clear. Jiang Shang's eyelids twitched. For a moment he did not know how to answer. "Then I'll eat." Yaya was happy. Her 2 little hands grabbed the pears and the small red fruits and stuffed them into her mouth, looking like she had not eaten for a long time. In the blink of an eye, the 2 plates of spirit fruits were eaten clean by her. Then, she picked up the plate that looked like a grape berry and excitedly ran to Lu Yi. She raised it up as if she was presenting a treasure. "Daddy, delicious." The corner of Lu Ye's mouth twitched. In an instant, the hall was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Everyone's eyes were focused on Lu Yi. Kong Cheng and the others' mouths were so wide open that an egg could be stuffed in. They could not believe their ears. Only then did Lu Yi realize that Jiang Shang wasn't the only one in the hall. There were 2 other people behind a table on the left. He didn't recognize one of them, but the other one looked very familiar. That guy was looking at Lu Yi with great interest and gave him a slight smile that made him feel like he was bathing in a spring breeze. This guy was Luo Shenxi. End of chapter. Chapter 1549. Lu Yi didn't know why Luo Shenxi was here. He was from the Daluo star system, so logically speaking he shouldn't be here. However, when he saw Yu Yao beside Luo Shenxi, Lu Yi understood that Luo Shenxi had probably come with his family's elders. Moreover, judging from the current situation, Jiang Shang was probably entertaining Yu Yao. Since Lu Yi had brought Ye here, he decided to entertain them as well. Normally, Yu Yao wouldn't be so important to Rizhao, but Grand Luo Shenxi was the strongest in the four-way star system. Thus, even though Yu Yao was the only one here, Jiang Shang couldn't afford to be careless. At this moment, all eyes in the hall were focused on Lu Yi. Everyone's eyes were filled with shock. Even that Grand Luo Yu Yao beside Luo Shenxi was the same. Even though he didn't know Ye's background, the fact that she could move freely under Jiang Shang's aura meant that she was also a Rizhao. It was one thing for Rizhao to look so strange, but he actually called a star constellation his father. What was going on? Lu Yi looked down at Ye, patted her head and said softly, "Eat by yourself." Then he looked at Jiang Shang and cupped his fists. Lu Yi of the Nine Heavens greets the Realm Lord. Jiang Shang waved his feather fan lightly, retracting his aura. He smiled and said, "Sit." Ye's strange behavior was indeed surprising, but as Rizhao, his mental state was extraordinary. Naturally, he wouldn't act surprised. Under Kong Cheng's arrangement, Lu Yi sat at the table to Jiang Shang's left. The Yu Yao also took their seats. Soon, beautiful young female cultivators from the indefinite realms served spirit fruits and wine. Ye had already finished eating the bunch of grape-like berries. Seeing that there were more spirit fruits, she was instantly overjoyed. She didn't care what others thought of her and only cared about herself. Jiang Shang's gaze finally moved away from Ye. He looked at Lu Yi thoughtfully. Lu Yi of the Nine Heavens, I think I've heard this name before. Across from Lu Yi, Yu Yao stroked his beard. I think I've heard of it too. The female Yu Yao who had recognized Lu Yi immediately said, "Realm Lord, a few years ago, the blood race and the bug race joined forces to issue a bounty. I wonder if Realm Lord has any recollection of it." Jiang Shang suddenly revealed a look of understanding. He looked at Lu Yi and asked, "Little friend, could you be the Nine Heavens Lu Yi who wiped out the entire blood race army in the Alpha origin stage and left only one Zerg alive?" Even Lu Yi himself didn't know about this matter. The vampires and the insectoids issued a bounty on me? Was there a mistake? However, there was no one else in the Alpha origin stage who could exterminate the vampires and the insectoids. He suddenly recalled that back in the Blue Jade realm, a blood race constellation had immediately recognized him. In the end, the blood race's Yu Yao had chased after him from hundreds of millions of kilometers away. At that time, he found it strange that a blood-kindred constellation that he had never met before would recognize him. However, if the blood kindred had already noticed him and even issued a bounty for him, then it was understandable. Back then, in the Alpha origin stage, he had wiped out the entire blood race Divine Sea army, and only one Zerg Divine Sea expert had survived. That Zerg Divine Sea expert must have left behind an image of him without his knowledge. "Little friend, you don't know?" Jiang Shang looked at him with a smile. Lu Yi shook his head. "This is the first time I've heard of it." Jiang Shang joked, "The bounty issued by the two races is very generous. Even Yu Yao would be tempted. Little friend, you should be careful when you travel the universe in the future." Lu Yi nodded. "Thank you for your reminder, Realm Lord." If it was in the past, he would indeed have to be careful. However, he had Yaya by his side now, so there was nothing to be afraid of. If someone really came looking for trouble, Yaya would teach them a lesson. Luo Shenxi looked at him excitedly. "So Brother Lu has such a glorious past. No wonder you're so amazing." From the looks of it, he seemed to be even more interested in Lu Yi. On the other hand, Yu Yao, who was beside Luo Shenxi, looked puzzled. Based on the time, The last Divine Sea battle had happened only a few years ago. At that time, Lu Yi of the Nine Heavens was only at the Divine Sea level. How could he be at the late constellation stage now? This cultivation speed was a little shocking. She faintly guessed that this Lu Yi of the Nine Heavens was not the same person as the Lu Yi of the Nine Heavens. Jiang Shang spoke again. Little friend, the Nine Heavens realm you came from shouldn't be in the nearby galaxies, right? Lu Yi replied, the Nine Heavens realm is located in the Jade Conch galaxy. Jade Conch? Jiang Shang pondered for a moment, then shook his head. I've never heard of it. Even though the Jade Conch galaxy wasn't too far away, it radiated in all directions. Although Jiang Shang had traveled to many galaxies, as long as he hadn't been to the Jade Conch galaxy, he naturally wouldn't have heard of it. Little friend, are you traveling here? Jiang Shang asked again. It's not traveling. I'm returning to the Jade Conch galaxy and passing by this place. Jiang Shang was full of praise. When I was your age, I only dared to travel around the galaxy. Little friend, you've traveled hundreds of millions of miles. You're young and promising. I had no choice, that's all. Lu Yi sighed. I accidentally passed through a bug path in this galaxy and went to an unfamiliar galaxy. It wasn't easy for me to find the way home, so I set out on my return journey. Oh! Jiang Shang was surprised. Of course, he knew about the insect path. There was a known insect path in the indefinite star system, but the insect path was connected to a desolate star system. It wasn't a threat to indefinite, and it wasn't of much value. Jiang Shang casually asked, which star system did you enter through the insect path? Since Lu Yi could travel all the way from a single constellation, then the galaxy shouldn't be too far away. He might even have heard of it or even been there. Lu Yi stared at him and said softly, the Myriad Constellation Galaxy. In the main hall, the group of Yueyao had been drinking and eating spirit fruits, chatting in low voices. However, when they heard the words Myriad Constellation Galaxy, they all paused and looked at Lu Yi in unison. Even Jiang Shang, who was sitting at the front, was stunned. Opposite Lu Yi, the Daluo Yueyao's eyes lit up. Everyone had obviously heard of the famous Myriad Constellation Galaxy. After a long while, Jiang Shang said slowly, this seat has heard of a Myriad Constellation Galaxy. I heard that there are countless bug paths there. Cultivators from many galaxies gather there. It's a prosperous place that no ordinary galaxy can compare to. Rumor has it that it's the center of the universe. Lu Yi nodded. It's that Myriad Constellation Galaxy. Jiang Shang's expression was solemn and a little excited. Little friend, are you sure? Lu Yi said, I've lived there for several years. There's no mistake. There's a Myriad Constellation ocean there. It's vast and boundless. Cultivators from all over the universe live on the Myriad Constellation ocean. Asterisk crack. Asterisk someone accidentally crushed the wine glass in his hand. The wine spilled through the gaps between his fingers, but he didn't care. Instead, he asked excitedly, Little friend Lu, how long did it take you to come here from the Myriad Constellation Galaxy? A year. Lu Yi turned to look at him. What happened next was similar to the conversation between Lu Yi and Hua Cheng. After learning that Lu Yi had only spent a year to come here from the Myriad Constellation Galaxy, the atmosphere in the hall instantly became lively. Just as Lu Yi expected, everyone who knew of the Myriad Constellation Galaxy was interested in this famous galaxy. No one was willing to be complacent. With such a good opportunity to interact with cultivators from other galaxies, no one wanted to miss it. If they could blend in, they might be able to get a piece of the pie. When they learned that there was a bug path in the desolate star field that could connect to the outside world, Yueyao became even more excited. Daluo Yueyao asked, Little friend, can you tell us the specific location of the bug path? He was a guest. Logically speaking, it wasn't his place to ask. However, this matter was too important. He couldn't wait to know the specifics. Lu Yi didn't hide anything. He said, the bug path is inside the Mist Dragon. His words were like a bucket of cold water, drenching the fire in everyone's hearts. Naturally, everyone knew about the Mist Dragon. They had all traveled and explored the desolate star field before, but the mist dragon's strangeness was something they could not contend with. Not to mention Yu Yao, even Ri Zhao would not be able to find his way inside. Since ancient times, countless experts had been lost inside the mist dragon. Jiang Shang looked pensive. Little friend, since you were able to walk out of the mist dragon, you must have your own way, right? Lu Yi nodded. This junior is untalented, but with the guidance of the reincarnation tree, I do have my own way. The guidance of the reincarnation tree. Everyone's eyes widened. As the most famous treasure in this part of the universe, who hadn't heard of the reincarnation tree? It was an ancient artifact that was born along with this part of the universe. It had guided countless cultivators. It could be said that anyone who was chosen by the reincarnation tree wasn't mediocre. The fact that Lu Yi was able to receive guidance from the reincarnation tree was intriguing. To tell you the truth, the star chart I used to travel from the Wanxiang Galaxy to the Jade Conch was also given to me by Old Shu. Otherwise, with my insignificant experience, how could I know the way home? Lu Yi continued to use the reincarnation tree as a banner, but what he said was also the truth. Everyone was relieved after hearing his words. It turned out that the reincarnation tree was involved. They were wondering why such a young star constellation dared to travel from the Wanxiang Galaxy to the Jade Conch. Jiang Shang sorted out his thoughts and said, "So, little friend, leaving the Wanxiang Galaxy, entering the mist dragon through the bug path, and coming here is only part of the route?" "Yes. I heard from Kong Cheng and the others that little friend came here to discuss something important. May I know what you want to discuss with me?" "This junior wants to borrow the path." Lu Yi looked at him. "Borrow the path?" Everyone was puzzled. Jiang Shang smiled and said, "Little friend, you're just passing by. You have no ill intentions towards this galaxy, so it's naturally no problem for you to borrow the path." Not to mention that Lu Yi came to greet him. Even if he didn't, it wouldn't be a big deal. Since ancient times, there had been many galaxies that didn't belong to the indefinite galaxy that passed by. As long as they didn't cause trouble, no one would care about them. However, Lu Yi shook his head and said, "Realm Lord, you don't understand. I don't want to borrow the path for myself. Let's put it this way, I plan to bring a group of people out after returning to the Jade Conch. When that time comes, we'll definitely pass by your galaxy, so I'll have to ask for your convenience." Chapter 1550. Only then did Jiang Shang understand Lu Ye's intentions. It was reasonable. If even he was interested in the Wanxiang Galaxy, others would naturally be interested as well. Moreover, Lu Yi had a star chart that led to the Wanxiang Galaxy. If he could take the cultivators from his galaxy to the Wanxiang Sea, it would benefit his fellow countrymen. Jiang Shang didn't agree immediately. Instead, he asked, "How many people do you want to bring with you?" If it was just one or two people like Lu Yi, it wouldn't be a problem at all. The indefinite galaxy had stood tall in the starry skies for so many years, so it naturally had its own means of dealing with such situations. But if there were too many people, then they would have to discuss it properly. Otherwise, if a misunderstanding arose, it would be difficult for everyone to clean up the mess. Lu Yi shook his head and said, "I don't know the exact number of people. However, please be at ease, Realm Lord. When the time comes, the people I'll bring will not be sunshine. If it's Yu Yao, there will not be more than 2 people. The rest will be constellations." There was no sunlight in the Jade Conch realm at all. Even if he wanted to, he wouldn't be able to bring Yu Yao here. There were definitely not many Yu Yao here. It would already be good enough if he could bring 2 Yu Yao from the Jade Conch realm. Jiang Shang nodded. Since that's the case, there's no problem. Then he changed the topic. "However, I have a request." Jiang Shang nodded. "But I do have a request." "Sector Lord, please speak." Jiang Shang looked at him and smiled. "When you pass by our galaxy, I hope you can bring along a group of cultivators from our galaxy." Lu Yi had already guessed that he would have such an idea, so he didn't refuse. He immediately nodded and said, "No problem." On the other side, Yueyao coughed softly. "Little friend Lu, my Daluo galaxy is also interested in this matter. I wonder if you can make things convenient for us?" Bring along the people from my great net galaxy. Originally, he had come to visit Jiangshang for another matter. He didn't expect to run into this situation by chance. He couldn't miss this opportunity. This was probably his only chance to enter the Wanxiang star system. If he missed this opportunity, there wouldn't be another one. Therefore, even though he wasn't familiar with Lu Yi, he could only thicken his skin and mention it. Afraid that Lu Yi would refuse, he hurriedly added, "Of course, if you agree, I, Big Luo, will give you a gift as thanks." Lu Yi waved his hand and said, "There's no need for a thank you gift. It's something that happened along the way. If Big Luo is interested, you can first gather people and wait." Yue Yao's eyes lit up. "Young friend, you're a straightforward person. This old man thanks you." As he spoke, he raised his wine cup and offered a toast. Lu Yi raised his glass and drank. Lu Yi put down his wine cup and said, "However, there is one thing that I have to make clear in advance. Although the 10,000 Elephant Sea is a sea that accommodates hundreds of rivers and cultivators from countless galaxies, and does not prohibit cultivators from the constellations from coming in and out, the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy has set some rules for the convenience of managing the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Please abide by them. Otherwise, if you break the rules when you reach the Earth domain, no one can save you." The group hurriedly sat up straight. Big Luo Yueyao said, "Young friend, please speak." She looked like she was all ears. On the 10,000 Elephant Sea, the structure of the forces can be based on the domain structure or the galaxy structure. However, no force can have more than 3 Yueyao. As for Rizhao, it is even more impossible to stay on the 10,000 Elephant Sea for long. Therefore, if you want to go to the 10,000 Elephant Sea, the constellations will be the main force. Yueyao will be the minority. Jiangshang nodded and said, "I seem to have heard of this rule before. This is how it should be." With so many people from so many galaxies gathered in the 10,000 Elephant Sea, if there were no restrictions, it would have been chaotic long ago. If other galaxies can abide by the rules, so can we. Is there anything else to take note of? Lu Yi shook his head and said, "There's nothing special to take note of. However, the 10,000 Elephant Sea is very chaotic and does not prohibit fighting. Therefore, it is not easy to establish a foothold there." Big Luo Yueyao said, "Young friend, if it's convenient for you, please tell us more about the matters over there." The group looked at him eagerly, as if they were a group of country bumpkins who had never seen the world before. Yaya seemed to have eaten her fill and fell asleep in Lu Ye's arms again. Lu Yi gently hugged her and casually talked about the various matters on the 10,000 Elephant Sea. When they heard that there were many wonderful islands on the 10,000 Elephant Sea, and that the top spiritual island could produce spiritual jade veins, the group's eyes lit up. None of the galaxies in the 4 directions were top-level domains, so they had not even seen what a spiritual jade vein looked like. For a moment, they could not help but fantasize. If they could seize a top-level spiritual island on the 10,000 Elephant Sea, wouldn't they be able to sit on a spiritual jade vein? Then it would be of great use to cultivate their own cultivators in the future. However, everyone knew that this was only a dream. There were so many top-level domains and galaxies on the 10,000 Elephant Sea, and they would not have a chance to seize a top-level spiritual island. However, even if they did not seize a top-level spiritual island, it would be enough to seize a mid-level spiritual island. Speaking of the Whitey spirit, when everyone learned that a Whitey spirit was worth several thousand spiritual jades, they were even more shocked. Lu Yi even took out a Whitey spirit on the spot. After everyone looked at it, Jiangshang ordered someone to take it and cook it. When it was served again, each of them ate a little. They could all feel the pure energy contained in the fish meat. Yu Yao praised as she ate, "Whether it's the taste or the value of this fish, it is far superior to ordinary spiritual fish. As expected of something born on the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Little friend Lu, as you said, even if one does not have a skill on the 10,000 Elephant Sea, one can still make a living by fishing?" Lu Yi said with a strange expression, "Yes, you can. However, there is a saying in the fisherman's circle, fishing will ruin 3 generations, but playing with fish will ruin a lifetime. Unless there is no other choice, it is best not to get involved." Of course, The group of Yu Yao did not know that this saying was an accusation made by countless fishermen through blood and tears. They also did not know whether they had heard it or not. When they talked about the battle for the Constellation Hall, everyone was even more shocked than before. Tens of millions of constellations had participated in a grand event. Such a scene was unimaginable. No matter how powerful a galaxy was, the number of constellations it had was limited. Tens of millions of constellations. This was a number that no galaxy could reach. With such a large number of constellations gathered together, what kind of grand event would it be? When they learned that those who ranked higher in the Constellation Palace would not only be able to leave their names on the rankings, but could even use the power of the Constellation Palace to promote Yu Yao, the group of Yu Yao became excited. The Constellation Palace did not have time to participate this time, but as long as the Constellation Palace was still there would always be a chance for their juniors to participate in the future. If they could leave their names on the rankings, not only would they be able to make a name for themselves in the galaxy, but there would also be real benefits. They could not miss out on such an opportunity. Luo Shenxi's eyes shone. May I know Brother Lu's ranking on the rankings? He did not know Lu Ye's true strength, but he felt that Lu Yi was very strong. In his opinion, Lu Yi would definitely be able to leave his name on the rankings. Lu Yi slowly shook his head. I am ashamed to say this. Although I participated in the opening of the Constellation Palace, I was delayed midway and did not manage to leave my name. It was all the Constellation Palace's fault for bringing him to their palace. However, even though he did not manage to leave his name, he did not lose anything by obtaining a treasure like the minor Constellation Palace. Instead, he profited. What about me? Brother Lu, what do you think my ranking would be if I participated? Luo Shenxi asked again. Lu Yi looked apologetic. I have never fought with a powerhouse on the rankings, so I can't say for sure. In his opinion, Luo Shenxi would have no problem getting into the top 100, but that was about the limit. This was because there were too many veteran constellations participating in the Constellation Palace. However, this was his own judgment, so there was no need to say it out loud. The banquet continued. The group of Yu Yao asked about the 10,000 manifestations sea, and Lu Yi told them everything he knew. He told them about the magnificent wonders of space. In the end, the Yu Yao finally gave up when there was nothing left to say. However, they were still somewhat unsatisfied. They wanted nothing more than to enter the 10,000 manifestations galaxy and see it with their own eyes. Jiang Shang said, How long will it take for you to reach the Jade Conch Palace? Lu Yi replied, About 2 years. Jiang Shang nodded, Go for 2 years, come back for 2 years, let's count it as 5 years. Then, little friend, it's a deal. I'll make preparations during these 5 years, and when you return, I'll follow you to the Myriad Phenomenon Galaxy. No problem. Lu Yi nodded. De Luo Yu Yao hurriedly said, De Luo too. She was afraid that she would be left behind. Jiang Shang raised his cup. This is a blessing for Wu Ding. Thank you, Li. Cheers. The Yu Yao raised their cups in unison. Thank you, Li. Jiang Shang put down his cup and said, There's one more thing I need to ask you. Which direction are you going to take to reach the Jade Conch Palace? He then added, Please don't misunderstand. I'm not trying to find out where you're going. It's just that there's a direction outside the indefinite galaxy that's a little troublesome. What kind of trouble? Lu Yi asked. Jiang Shang said, A few decades ago, an insect hive drifted over from that direction. An insect hive? Lu Yi frowned. The insect race? That's right. Jiang Shang nodded. And that's no ordinary hive. There's more than one Rizhao overseeing it. They've been eyeing Wu Ding covetously for a long time, and there's a faint suspicion that they're about to invade. That's why it shouldn't be a problem if you go in a different direction, but if you happen to be going in that direction, things might be a little troublesome. Lu Yi didn't know if he was going in that direction. After some thought, he took out the star map given to him by the reincarnation tree. Please take a look at it for me, Realm Lord. There was nothing to hide from this star map. It wouldn't matter even if Jiang Shang knew the exact route from the Jade Conch Palace to the Vientiane Galaxy. He walked forward and presented the star map. Jiang Shang took it and frowned. This is a little troublesome. He discovered that according to the guidance on the star chart, Lu Yi was heading in the direction of the insectoid hive. Lu Yi was someone who the vampires and the insect race had put a bounty on. If the insect race were to discover his whereabouts, they would surely hunt him down to the bitter end. Lu Ye's heart skipped a beat upon seeing Jiang Shang's reaction. Such a coincidence? Jiang Shang nodded. Such a coincidence. After a pause, he glanced at Yaya, who was in Lu Ye's arms. Don't worry, young friend. With someone protecting you, you should be fine as long as you're careful. Chapter 1551. Lu Yi didn't just have to consider his own safety. He also had to consider what would happen if he brought the cultivators from his galaxy with him. He could hide his whereabouts, so he believed that as long as he was careful, there wouldn't be any problems. However, if he brought people from the Jade Conch galaxy over, it would be difficult for him to hide his entire fleet. If they were discovered with the nature of the insectoids, they wouldn't let the fleet pass safely. When a dispute arose, the Jade Conch galaxy wouldn't be able to resist. After pondering for a moment, Lu Yi asked, "Is it possible to take a detour?" His position in the starry sky was uncertain. The star chart given to him by the reincarnation tree showed him a route, but he didn't necessarily have to follow the star chart. He could take a detour to avoid the insectoids' territory and continue on the route on the star chart. However, this would take a lot of time, and he might even waste several years. Jiang Shang said, "It may be possible, but as long as the hive is still there, no one knows how far the insectoids' tentacles will extend. If little friend takes a detour and runs into them, trouble will be inevitable." This was a bit difficult. Lu Yi couldn't ask Jiang Shang to use the power of the indefinite galaxy to deal with the hive. The hive had drifted here decades ago. If the indefinite galaxy had the ability to deal with it, they wouldn't have delayed it until today. Since they hadn't, it meant that the situation was very tricky. Just as Lu Yi was in a difficult position, Jiang Shang spoke again. "Little friend, don't worry. Before you return, we will definitely deal with the hive. It won't delay our journey to the Myriad Sea." Lu Yi was slightly stunned. Although he agreed to take the people from the indefinite galaxy to the Myriad Sea, in the end, this was only a mutually beneficial cooperation. After all, the Jade Conch galaxy fleet needed to pass through, so he couldn't leave them behind. Now, Jiang Shang actually took the initiative to say that he wanted to deal with the hive that had more than one Rizhao guarding it. Lu Yi didn't know why. After all, such a battle wouldn't benefit the indefinite galaxy. However, Lu Yi only thought about it for a moment before he reacted. If it was really as he thought, then his trip here would be a great help to the indefinite galaxy. Lu Yi didn't say much and only raised his cup. "Thank you, Realm Lord." It was true that he had helped the indefinite galaxy a great deal, but if the indefinite galaxy could deal with the hive, she would also be helping him. Jiang Shang and Lu Yi drank a cup of wine and smiled at each other. Nothing needed to be said. Lu Yi did not intend to stay for long, so he got up and bid farewell. The road ahead was long, and he had been delayed here for half a month, so he wanted to set off on his return journey as soon as possible. Jiang Shang naturally tried to persuade Lu Yi to stay, probably because he wanted to know more about the 10,000 Elephant Sea, but seeing Lu Ye's firm attitude, he could only let him go. He ordered Kong Qing to escort Lu Yi out of the indefinite galaxy, and Kong Qing complied. Outside the Grand Hall, Kong Qing summoned his star boat and stood on it, waiting. Lu Yi held Yaya in her arms and bid farewell to Hua Qing. They talked and laughed for a while. All of them were meaningless words. Moments later, Lu Yi boarded the star boat, and Kong Qing turned it into a streak of light that shot out of the indefinite realm. Hua Qing watched them leave, his heart filled with gratitude. Although Lu Yi had said a lot of nonsense to him before he left, he knew in his heart that Lu Yi had done it on purpose. This way, the unbounded realm would know that Lu Yi had a good relationship with Qi Kong, and Qi Kong's situation would be better in the future. What a pity! Not far from Hua Qing, Luo Shenxi looked in the direction of Lu Ye's departure with the regretful expression. The reason he came here with Yu Yao was to fight with Lu Yi, but in the end, there was no place for him to speak at such an occasion, and Lu Yi was in a hurry to leave. Of course, he could not make any rude requests. Although he did not get what he wanted, Luo Shenxi looked forward to the future even more. If he could really go to the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy, he would be able to see the glory of the top constellations of many galaxies. This made him very excited, and he looked forward to Lu Ye's return more than anyone else. This matter is over. This old man will take his leave first. Hua Cheng prepared to leave. The woman who had spoken to Lu Yi earlier, Yu Yao, smiled and said, "Sect Master Hua, there is no hurry. Please return to the hall first. The Realm Master has said that he has something to discuss with you." Hua Cheng said in fear and trepidation, "This old man will naturally obey the Realm Master's orders." He knew that this was because of Lu Ye's performance just now. Otherwise, he would not have been invited back. If the indefinite realm really had something important to discuss, it would not have been his turn to participate. The group of Yu Yao and Luo Shenxi returned to the hall and sat down. As soon as he sat down, Hua Cheng heard Yu Yao say, "This Lu Ye came at the right time. This way, the matter our two realms need to plan will not be a problem." Jiang Shang smiled and said, "That's right. This seat did not expect such a good thing to happen at this juncture. The heavens are really helping us." Yu Yao said, "Actually, the two realms are not unaware of the seriousness of the matter. It's just that the calamity is at the indefinite realm's doorstep. They are counting on the indefinite realm to come out first." Jiang Shang said, "How could this seat not know what they are planning? The indefinite realm alone is not enough to deal with the hive." These words were a little humble. If the indefinite realm really wanted to deal with the hive, she had the ability to do so. However, she would have to pay a huge price. In a single battle, the entire cultivation world of the galaxy would be crippled, and the standard of cultivation would regress by thousands or even tens of thousands of years. If that happened, the indefinite realm's final fate would be to be nibbled away by the other three galaxies. In the future, the indefinite galaxy would cease to exist. This was an outcome they could not accept. Therefore, even if they had the ability, the indefinite galaxy had not really made a move for the past few decades. They only set up a defensive line outside their own territory to prevent the hive from invading. The other two sunshine powerhouses in the indefinite realm were stationed at the defensive line all year round. Over the past few decades, the indefinite realm had been working together to deal with the hive. Although the threat of the hive was right at the doorstep of the indefinite realm, if the indefinite realm were to suffer, who knew which galaxy would be next? The insectoids were a scourge. If they were not nipped in the bud, they would only become more and more troublesome because their reproductive ability was too strong. Among the other three galaxies, only the Daluo galaxy had expressed their willingness to help the indefinite realm more than a decade ago. Jingyue and Beixian were watching from the sidelines, waiting to reap the spoils of war. Of course, Jiang Shang knew that the powerhouses of the other two galaxies did not really think that way. They knew the dangers of the insectoids, but they were not willing to contribute too much. They only wanted the indefinite realm to bear the banner. Daluo Yueyao had come to the indefinite realm because of the hive. The matter had been delayed for decades. If it continued to be delayed, the insectoids would only become stronger. If they were to reach a certain level, even if the four galaxies worked together, they might not be able to defeat them. Once the indefinite realm was defeated, the other three galaxies would not be able to escape unscathed. In the end, they would all be devoured by the insectoids. He planned to persuade Jiang Shang first, then contact the powerhouses of Jingyue and Beixian to prepare for a war against the insectoids. He had done this once before, but it did not yield much results. It was the same this time. Before Lu Ye's arrival, Jiang Shang had no intention of relenting. The indefinite realm's intentions were simple. Either everyone died together, or everyone worked together. In any case, the indefinite realm would not be the first to stand out. Otherwise, even if they won the war against the insectoids, the indefinite realm situation would not be too good in the future. In such a complicated situation, it could be said that everyone in the four galaxies had their own plans. Without a suitable opportunity, it would be very difficult to form an alliance. Lu Ye's arrival was the best opportunity. As long as news of the Wanxiang Sea spread, both Jingyue and Beixian would be very interested. However, if they wanted to go to the Wanxiang Sea, they would have to wait for Lu Ye's safe return. If they wanted Lu Yi to return safely, they would have to deal with the hive first. Lu Yi had realized this possibility at the time, which was why he felt that his arrival would be a great help to the indefinite realm. Even if he was not a cultivator of the indefinite realm and did not know much about it, some things did not need to be understood to have some guesses. That little friend Lu is a straightforward person. Since he's willing to take my people to the Wanxiang Sea, I believe he'll be willing to take Jingyue and Beishuan's people as well. It's just a few more people, it won't be too much of a hindrance to him. Realm Lord Jiang, I'll discuss with Jingyue and Beixian. I believe they'll be very interested in the Wanxiang Sea. If they agree, Jiang Shang said straightforwardly, as long as they're willing to work hard, the indefinite realm will be fine. Then it's settled. Yueao laughed and stood up. There's no time to lose. I'll set off now. Big Luo Yueao hurriedly left with a confident look on her face. No wonder he was so confident. No one could resist the temptation of the Wanxiang Sea. Who would have thought that the disaster that had plagued the 4 galaxies for so many years could be resolved because of the arrival of an outsider? Lu Yi'er of the 9 heavens was really the 4 galaxies' lucky star. After Yueao left with Luo Shenxi, Jiang Shang pondered for a moment. It was unknown what he was thinking about. After a long time, he turned to look at Hua Cheng. Sect Master Hua, I heard that little friend Lu has a good relationship with your disciple? Hua Cheng hurriedly said, little friend Lu and my disciple met in the alpha origin stage of the reincarnation tree. As for their relationship, it seems to be quite good. Good, very good. Jiang Shang praised. We cultivators will meet many people in our lives. There are bad people, good people, or noble people. If you meet them, you must cherish them. Hua Cheng repeatedly agreed. The war with the insect race is not far away. When the time comes, I'll need you and your disciple to work hard. Your disciple has just ascended to the star constellation realm and is still a little weak. If Sect Master Hua is not worried, please send him to the indefinite realm. The Heaven Enlightenment Pavilion is about to open. Hua Cheng's expression brightened and he hurriedly stood up. Thank you for your guidance, Realm Lord. My disciple will never forget your kindness. Apart from little Hua, who was still strong, everyone else in the family of 7 showed symptoms. My symptoms aren't serious. I had a fever 2 days ago, and now the most uncomfortable thing is that my brain fog has appeared again. My thoughts are a little muddled. End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.